Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 2025 Destination Medical Center Real Estate Development and Investment Summit. My name is Mike Flynn, and I am DMC's Senior Director of Economic Development. We are excited to have you in Rochester today to hear about all of the great things going on in our community and the unprecedented opportunity that is literally right around the corner. I'm also excited for you to hear today's discussion on technology-enabled housing, which is an area of real estate development that is of special interest to many of us in the room. Speaking for myself as someone with aging parents managing a variety of health issues, I only wish that they lived in a home that was designed, engineered, and constructed in a way that made it easier for them to manage their health and their healthcare needs. When planning this year's summit, we chose this innovation topic for two reasons. The first is that DMC is keenly interested in helping to bring bold, paradigm-shifting real estate development to Rochester. We are interested in new models that are innovative, forward-looking, and change the perspective on what is possible here. And second, as one of today's speakers said during a planning call a few weeks ago, there is no better market in the world than Rochester, Minnesota, to solve the complicated questions of how to bring technology-enabled housing that is focused on an aging-in-place demographic that also effectively extends the walls of the clinical setting into a patient's home, and to do that all at scale. And there's no better place to do that than America's City for Health. And the good news is, through our conversations, we've learned that that future is not that far away. And thanks to the people you'll be hearing from today and many others around the world, hopefully when my kids are helping to take care of me, hopefully way in the future, this process will all be much easier. Finally, we hope that you're inspired by what you hear today and want to learn more about specific development opportunities in our city. So to that end, we've asked two of our partners from DMC in the city of Rochester to talk about real estate opportunities that are either in play today or look to be in play soon. And following that, we're going to get you out in the community with a variety of tours so that you can see the sites, kick the proverbial tires, and learn more about what a remarkable place Rochester, Minnesota is. So we've got a big day. We've got a lot of great content, hopefully some deal making. We've tried to provide ample time for networking breaks so that you can meet one another and exchange contact information and hopefully meet our wonderful sponsors that are out in the lobby and in the room today. So with that, I'd like to get started by welcoming the mayor of our fine city, Mayor Kim Norton, to the stage to introduce the event.
Oh, you're almost awake. Try not to put you to sleep. I want to thank Mike for the introduction and for his opening words, and really thank all of you for being here today. It's wonderful to see such a strong mix of folks in attendance. We have local leaders. I know I saw our city council president, Randy Schubring, in the back. We have city staff, many of whom are here, real estate professionals, designers, developers, bankers, and investors. And I want to offer a special warm welcome to those of you who drove a little ways, especially if you had to drive through construction, to get here this morning. We're thrilled that you've joined us. This is really an exciting time for Rochester. We are a city on the move, transforming, growing, and innovating at a pace we haven't seen before. Your attendance and the energy in the room from all the networking I heard reflects the momentum that you will learn more about for the rest of the day. At the heart of the transformation is Mayo Clinic's bold, forward, Unbound initiative, a vision that positions Rochester not only as the home for the world's top-ranked hospital, but also as a global hub for innovation in healthcare. The vision is already spurring interest and investment in housing, infrastructure, and commercial development, but that's only the beginning. We're also seeing incredible momentum from the University of Minnesota Rochester, a key partner in our city's innovation. UMR, as we call it, continues to grow its student population, expand academic offerings, and foster public-private partnerships that strengthen Rochester's identity as a knowledge-based economy. The university's downtown presence is exciting and a commitment to innovative education models that are helping attract talent, support workforce development, and contribute to a vital urban core. I had a chance to talk with them this week and loved it. UMR is not only educating the future healthcare leaders, but also driving economic growth and community vitality in meaningful ways. We're also proud of the progress with Link BRT, Bus Rapid Transit, Rochester's first bus rapid transit line. With construction beginning this year, it's a major step toward connected, sustainable, and accessible cities, especially as we think about transit-oriented development and vibrant urban living spaces. And of course, this growth becomes a clear and urgent need for housing. It's something that we as a city are taking very seriously. According to the Maxfield Research and Consulting Study, which we've only heard about, not actually gotten a copy of yet, we need over 18,000 new housing units by 2030 to meet anticipated demand. That's an incredible amount of housing. That includes a range of housing options, and we talk about this a lot. We need rental properties, but we need ownership, workforce housing, and so much more across all price points. It's not just about quantity. It is about quality, access, and equity, and I would add to that sustainability. This is why events like today are so very important. We're not just inviting investments, we're inviting ideas. We want you here to imagine how technology can help deliver better health through better housing. Rochester is a living lab for that kind of thinking. We believe in smart growth, intentional design, and partnerships that benefit everyone. We also recognize that it's not enough to just ask for development. We need to make it easier for you to get things done. And that's why the city has taken major steps to streamline processes, improve transparency, and remove unnecessary barriers to development. We've heard from many of you, and I've heard twice in the last 2 weeks, that this work that we're doing is making a difference, that you're noticing it, and that we're getting that kind of feedback, and it matters. This has been a priority for our team here in Rochester, and we really are proud of the progress we've made. You'll hear more details shortly from Ryan Yetzer, our Assistant City Administrator, who will talk through the specific tools and resources available to help you succeed here in Rochester. So whether you're from Rochester or just getting to know our community, we invite you to see what we see, a city that is growing smart, building boldly, and deeply committed to shaping a healthier and more connected future. So I want to thank you again for being here, and I'm going to hand it off to Patrick Sieb, who's the Director of Destination Medical Center, our host for today, for more comments. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor, and I just want to acknowledge the visionary leadership and the on the ground, in the trenches work that we get from our mayor. So please join me in thanking her for all of that work. I'd also like to thank two of our sponsors who helped in significant ways in supporting this event. All of the names are on the screen, but I'd like to call out HomeLink Smart Home Solutions, our platinum sponsor, and importantly, our reception sponsor later in the day, and our gold sponsor, Titan Development and Investment. So please join me in thanking them and all of the sponsors. And then I'd like to acknowledge, you heard from Mike, who leads our business development team. You won't hear from Anna Zimbelman, who has been doing all of the behind-the-works effort to organize and develop and recruit all of you to participate today. So please join me in thanking Anna and other members of the DMC team. So with that, we have been doing this summit nearly every year for the past 6 or 8 years. And along the way, we have developed new relationships, new partnerships, new friends, new colleagues. And it's always about bringing together people with ideas, people with money, and people with property, and creating the interaction, the soup that allows those conversations to happen and to result in new opportunities and new developments that wouldn't otherwise happen. And just to put a point on that, in the past 10 years, there has been a 100% increase in the amount of housing in the downtown. 100% increase in the amount of housing in the downtown in the past year, after a decade of slow or no growth. And that's a tribute and a credit to many of you in this room who have been doing that work, and an opportunity for those who are learning about this community and about the future of our community. And the demand continues to grow, and we know it will grow, and that's why events like this that provide you insight into the demand, that gives you confidence in the future of our city, that gives you access to people who can show you around and tell you what's happening on the ground. And those of you who have signed up for tours, and if you haven't, I would encourage you to do so, to walk with some of our staff around the footprint of the Bold Forward Unbound project, walk through the downtown to see the retail opportunities, walk through the downtown to understand how Link bus rapid transit will create development opportunities along that 3-mile corridor, understanding the public infrastructure, public realm investments that are happening that create the anchor for new development and new opportunities. So we have a very rich and full day ahead of us. And I think that really the most important thing to take away is Rochester is a very successful city that is on its way to becoming even more successful. I came across, and this is something that I think I found very profound. We have described ourselves as America's city for health, and we are leaning into that as we think about development in Rochester. We think about Discovery Square and the recruitment of life science companies. We think about UMR and the role they're playing in training future talent to support our community's growth. We think about it in terms of the potential around housing development. But do you know that when Rochester celebrated its centennial in 1954, 70 years ago, 71 years ago, Rochester celebrated its centennial. Rochester was a city of about 35,000 people. You could walk from one end of it to the other. And when it celebrated its centennial, it proclaimed Rochester as home to World's Medical Center, host to millions, surrounded by rich agriculture. And we could tell that same story today as we continue to lean into that brand and into that authentic character of what we are as a community. So with that, I'm going to begin. I'd like to introduce the first of our next round of speakers. So this next set of presentations is to help you all appreciate the demand drivers, the things that are going to support and accelerate Rochester's growth and demand. So I'm going to introduce Kyle Jordan, who is a member of the DMC team, part of Mike's team, whose work really surrounds telling the story of Rochester internationally and to companies that are looking to grow, looking to partner in Minnesota, looking to partner with Mayo Clinic. She is recently acknowledged as a 40 under 40. It's a big deal. The Business Journal acknowledged her as one of the rising stars in Minnesota as 40 under 40, and we are so fortunate to have her as a part of our team. So Kyle Jordan.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kyle Jordan, here to talk to you a little bit about how we are positioning Rochester as a global hub for healthcare innovation. So I want you to imagine today that you are not necessarily who you are, where you are. You are a founder from somewhere around the world. You might be from Finland or Korea or where you might be. Because I want to start with this image. Congratulations, you've made it to Rochester. But generally, when I'm talking to folks around the world and around the country, I start with a map. because the vast majority of people who are innovating in healthcare, they know Boston, they know the Bay Area, they maybe know Minnesota. They've definitely heard of Mayo Clinic, but for some reason they think it's in a place like New York. So I always want to set the stage that here's where we actually are. And while we are kind of in the middle of the country, that's like positive for our connection to not only the rest of the United States, but to global destinations as well. So connected extremely well, not only by the Rochester Airport here like in town, but also the Minneapolis Airport not far down the road. I have been working in economic development now for over 15 years in regional organizations, state organizations. No one can be as focused as we can be in this community. This image is something I often show to companies who are considering where they should land in the US because they haven't really thought about, my specific technology matters. It's not just that I have a healthcare innovation or that I want to go to the US or that something I'm doing is really unique and interesting. It's really about who is doing the work that aligns with my research. So we've developed this particular image, which is constantly changing, by the way, by communicating with various teams within Mayo Clinic to better understand the types of technology that they are looking for. All right, so now that we know what is a fit in this community, we go find companies who have those types of technologies. So knowing that medical device, digital health, diagnostics, these are focus areas for Mayo Clinic, we can identify the right international and domestic conferences and events to target them. What do we actually talk to them about when we're at those events? Healthcare founders tend to be extremely technical. They have questions about things like regulatory pathway, reimbursement, contract manufacturing, et cetera. So the fact that our team can speak healthcare to them is very unique. Not many other communities around this country can do that. So again, with that hat on as an international founder, I want you to think about a company I recently spoke to from Finland. They had been accepted into a program with Mayo Clinic. It's the Bears Surgical Innovation Summit, for those who are familiar. They were coming to attend that event, and they thought to themselves, well, while we're there, we have a lot of other questions about bringing our technology to the US. Can you help us find a lawyer to do our US incorporation? Can you help us find our first hire? We need somebody who understands cardiac device and sales and distribution, okay? We need reimbursement. We need somebody to contract manufacture this item. The answer is yes. We have that connection here in Rochester, not only in this community, but in the Twin Cities. So what we're doing in these events, talking to technology companies, is try to make Minnesota really like sticky, is the word that we tend to use. Because if we can make it sticky, the conversation about coming here, opening your office, investing in Rochester becomes so much easier. So not only does our team understand how to speak the language of healthcare, we know how to answer the questions that are technical to connect people to the proper resources here in our community. And then eventually we hope to welcome them to Rochester. So of course, Destination Medical Center has a big role to play with the Discovery Square campus, just 495 steps from the front door of Mayo Clinic. It's extremely useful for companies who are at those early stages, very flexible space, surrounded by people from not only Mayo Clinic, but the University of Minnesota Rochester. But once those companies are growing, we want to make sure that we have other locations for them in the community as well. So thinking about the Rochester Technology Campus or the business park at the Rochester Airport. The logistics out there are unparalleled for these types of companies who need a cold chain, for example. So that is just my very quick introduction into how we work with early stage companies, particularly from international locations that are thinking about their US destination, ideally Destination Medical Center. So speaking about these opportunities outside of DMC, places like the technology campus and the airport, I would like to introduce our next speaker, which is Ryan Yetzer, Assistant City Administrator for Rochester. He has led major initiatives in public policy, urban planning, and economic development. He directed a comprehensive rewrite of the city's zoning ordinance, aligning it with national best practices. Ryan also integrated development services and infrastructure teams to streamline processes. His leadership has shaped key growth strategies, including the comprehensive plan, unified development code, and economic development policies, focusing on coordinated, efficient, and forward-thinking city development. Ryan.
My name is Ryan Yetzer. I'm an assistant city administrator here for the city of Rochester. And what I'm going to be talking about today is how the city is preparing itself for the transformation that is frankly underway and happening here in our city. To set the stage a little bit first, the city is, for those that aren't familiar, Rochester is about 54 square miles with a daytime population around 150,000. And of course, we are home to what brought us all here together today, the Destination Medical Center Economic Development Initiative. Some other highlights for the city of Rochester before we get into preparing for transformation. I need to brag a little bit about the city for you all. So to start, the city of Rochester commonly places high on lists that put together for best places to live. Rochester is commonly at the top of that list as the best place to live. We, of course, are home to the #1 hospital in the nation, and as Patrick would say, that is worth repeating. We are home to the #1 hospital in the nation, and I don't know that that is said enough. The city hosts roughly 3 million visitors a year from all 50 states and 130 countries, and we are commonly found to be a city that is one of the most recession-resilient cities in the country. Also worth noting, the folks that live here enjoy the city of Rochester. So this is from our community survey results in 2022. By and large, the vast majority of folks that live here rate Rochester as an excellent place to live, an excellent place to raise children, and a safe place to live, and they plan to stay here. And so these are really encouraging numbers for us that work for the city to remind ourselves that folks really do enjoy the city and intend to stay here. So, preparing for investment. We are at the doorstep, frankly, opening the door of unprecedented investment and growth in the city of Rochester. And so, some of the tools that we have in place to support that investment first is our voter-approved sales tax. So, in November of 2023, the voters approved extending a sales tax that was already in place with a focus of 4 different buckets of money: economic vitality, street reconstruction, flood control, and the sports and recreation complex. Economic vitality primarily focuses on housing creation, economic development, and workforce development. Street reconstruction and flood control and water control, those are pretty self-explanatory, but crucial investments that the voters agreed are crucial investments for the city to reinvest in our infrastructure. And then the sports and recreation complex, which tends to steal the limelight of these 4 buckets of money. But what I will say is this, that when we complete this project, we will have a facility that sets Rochester apart from the region in a sports and recreation complex, as well as provides an amazing amenity for our residents here in the city of Rochester. Infrastructure investments. So this is just a handful of the projects. I realize they are small, but what I'm trying to communicate here is we have an unbelievable number of infrastructure investments underway. This slide alone totals over $330 million of infrastructure investments that are happening in the city. These are not projects in the pipeline. These are projects that are moving forward. Some to highlight are the 75th Street Park and Ride and the North Broadway Park and Ride, preparing the downtown for transformation and handling our parking in a more sustainable, effective way so that the downtown real estate can be used as such. Another one I'll highlight is the West Zumbro sewer investments. Mayor Norton talked about the need for housing, and I'll certainly hit on that as well, but this sewer investment is a key piece to continuing to invest in housing growth in Rochester. And then, of course, the North Broadway reconstruction, which we are now on phase 2. Some of you may have experienced it this morning with some road closures. But what's exciting about that is there's a ton of planning that has gone into what we're seeing happen on North Broadway. The city started with rezoning, then that was followed with North Broadway reconstruction phase 1 and now phase 2. And what has followed that is investment. The projects like the Brick, Benaya, Silver Lake Crossing, stack development in the pipeline. Other projects that are happening on that North Broadway corridor, really making it the transit-oriented development vision that we've had. Now, transformational investments. A whole nother slew of projects. This slide totals over $620 million worth of projects that are underway. Some to highlight here, of course, Link Bus Rapid Transit that the mayor touched on, and there's a tour of today. I'd encourage folks to attend the West Transit Village, which is an amazing opportunity to capitalize on that Link Rapid Transit. Of course, the 6th Street and Riverfront improvement projects, including the bridge, enabling an unprecedented investment opportunity just adjacent to our downtown. Soldiers Field Park improvement, a little check mark on that one because that is done and has been a wildly successful project. But if anyone has questions or would like to learn more about these projects, I would encourage you to stop by the city booth and ask some city teammates. But these are incredibly exciting projects that are underway in the city of Rochester. Investment in Rochester continues to grow. You will see here the building permits year over year continue to increase, and we don't expect any slowdown on that front. Last year, we set a record with the value of construction happening in Rochester. This is specifically building permits. If we put in things like trade permits, the amount of construction that happened in Rochester or was approved in Rochester in 2024 was exceeded $850 million. And then, of course, the big one, Mayo Clinic's pulled forward Unbound investment. And so a $5+ billion investment happening right here in our downtown, and certainly shaping much of the work that we do. So how are we going to handle and what are some of our tools to manage some of this investment? So first, as the mayor touched on, housing. There is a need for housing. I'm not going to read all these slides off to you, or all these stats off to you. Perhaps the most jarring stat is based on our last Maxfield housing study. We should now, because of the shortfall year over year, we should now be creating 960 home ownership opportunities each year to keep up with the pace of the need for single family or home ownership opportunities, not necessarily single family. These numbers, as Mayor touched on, these numbers are being refreshed with the updated Maxfield housing study. I won't bury the lead and tell you they are only increasing. We only have more need for housing, not less. And so while the whole report isn't out, I will just share that to no one's surprise, the report is not going to say we don't need to continue attacking this problem. As a city, we see it as sort of two paths forward. We realize there's challenges with development. There's market challenges, there's the uncertainty around tariffs, there's all sorts of things. However, as the city team, we see two options. We can wait for the market to shift, or we can attack the problem with our own policies, procedures, and things like how can we support projects financially and how can we ensure to have the best process possible to support the projects. So some of our tools, financial tools, are on this slide. I realize it says to support housing. These tools, some of these tools can certainly be used to support other developments as well, and we have a handful of tools not on this slide. I will highlight the TIF and home ownership on the next couple slides, but things like our ADU incentive policy, adaptive reuse in the historic district, and the 4D program are tools that maybe are a little less talked about that are equally as important. Home ownership creation program. So this stems from the sales tax, the economic vitality sales tax approval. Technically, the program has been in place since February of 2020 through our fee reimbursement program. However, and the stats follow as such. However, I think the more impressive number is since 2024, when we created specifically the home ownership creation program, so in just about a year, we have supported the creation of 450 home ownership opportunities through an $8.5 million allocation and investment. And so we at the city are continuing to attack the home ownership shortfall that we have, and this is a really exciting program to help support that. Tax increment financing. Again, the city looked at this and said, how can we respond to the market and be more flexible? And so in this last year, the city revised their TIF policy to be more flexible and be able to respond to the market. And so that has been updated and in place. And again, if you have questions specific to that, we've got lots of experts in the room here from the city that can help answer TIF questions. Regulatory tools. So those are the financial tools, but perhaps what cities have even more control over is their regulatory environment. But things like having our plans in place, codes and ordinances, maps and policies, et cetera. I want to highlight these numbers on the bottom. About 95% of our commercial and multifamily permits in this last year in 2024 were received a review letter in 3 weeks or less. Likewise, on the residential side, 99% of building permits received a review letter in 3 weeks or less. And so these are things that we are focused on to try to support development as it comes through, and we realize that time is money. Regulatory alignment. So what I like to highlight on this slide, some folks may be familiar, but There's a number of different housing conversations happening at the state legislature, and the city of Rochester has done almost all of those things already here locally. But what I like to highlight on this slide is the reason we're able to do those things locally is by having these regulatory alignments. So we've taken the time and put the work in, starting with the comprehensive plan and following up with everything thereafter to have the policies in place that, frankly, much of the state is still trying to figure out how they can get there, and the city of Rochester is already there. What is the UDC? This is our zoning ordinance. So when I say UDC, that I'm referring to the city's zoning ordinance. This was new a couple of years ago, and we've seen great results since it's been in place. What makes the Unified Development Code so great? Can really sort of boil it down into four things: permissive dimensional standards, mixed-use districts, parking reductions, and process predictability. And the most important bullet point on that list is process predictability. The number one thing that we can do from the city's regulatory perspective is provide predictability within the development process. And that is what we've done, in part by shifting some of those approvals to a staff level, but increasing the standard along with it. So I'm going to bury the lead. A lot of zoning things happen through public hearings that folks say, well, there's no standard on that, but then the public hearing happens and now the standard is added in. And so we locally can sort of address that by taking those things that typically are added in through public hearings and making them requirements and then transitioning that to a staff level, which I'll get in more in a moment. Also, process improvements. These are things the city watches closely. We have the technology, we have the infrastructure set up within our team to support development in the best way possible. One example of the UDC is this missing middle housing, which is missing middle housing, for those that aren't familiar, is sort of that in-between. More than a single-family home duplex, less than a large apartment building. And really an underutilized opportunity within the city of Rochester is our R2X zoning districts, which surrounds the downtown core and is ripe for missing middle housing. All of the things that you are seeing, if you've paid attention to the state legislature, all of the things that you are seeing in their yes to housing or missing middle housing bills are already enacted here in the city of Rochester. Things like reduced parking standards, more form-based code, no floor area ratio, those sorts of things. And we can achieve that through neighborhood protection standards and basic design standards built right into the ordinance to ensure that projects are meeting the standards that neighbors want to see while also allowing development to move forward. And I want to emphasize that because on this next slide, there's sometimes a misconception that, well, if you get rid of public hearings, you are eliminating neighborhood feedback from the process. And actually, quite the opposite. The city of Rochester has increased our neighborhood connections through the processes we have in place. From 2021 to 2022, we had a 350% increase in neighborhood informational meetings. So when folks aren't showing up to public hearings, it's not because they don't know what's going on with the project. It's actually the exact opposite. It's because they know exactly what's going on with the project and they don't need to show up to the public hearing. And so we are requiring those things up front so that there aren't surprises throughout the development process. And then the chart on the right here just shows how we've shifted from staff approvals to, from planning commission or council approvals to staff approvals since the adoption of the UDC. Previously, it was roughly 50-50%. Now it's more 65-35. UDC regulation and so recognition. So we've received a handful of awards here and there for the UDC, but perhaps the most at least for me, rewarding statement, and I know Chris is in the room, so maybe I'm embarrassing him here, but I want to read this bottom one because I think it's important. A lot of municipalities talk about how they have reformed their housing development process to accommodate expedited timelines. However, I think everyone on our team has been tremendously surprised at just how much this rings true with your team in the process. Right now, there is no comparable municipality that our team has worked with that would hold a candle to what Rochester has created. We've put a lot of work into creating the process that we have here, and there are some things that are important there. Choosing the right zoning district, those sorts of things are important. But if you are able to select a project that aligns, you will not. I will say this: you will not find a more permissive or a more streamlined process anywhere around us compared to what we have created, and I'm really confident in saying that. Lastly, I just want to show this. Again, we track our numbers very closely. I mentioned on an earlier slide that bottom piece of our building permit review times. This is a report that we put out monthly, distribute it to our partners to ensure that we're sharing our data with you. How long are our review times taking? Trying to get that information out as real time as possible. Here's another example. How are we doing on housing creation 1 year over year or as compared to our standards. So again, I'll wrap up here with just, again, thank you to everybody in the room. We are excited to have you here. We're eager to work with you, and I really believe that together we can transform the city of Rochester in the way that we've been visioning for so long. So thank you. I have the privilege of introducing the next speaker, Chancellor Carroll. So Chancellor Carroll has led the University of Minnesota Rochester since 2014, guiding its growth and focus on innovation and equity. Under her leadership, UMR has seen major enrollment gains and national recognition for equity. The Health and Science Campus is also expanding into digital health through strong employer partnerships. And with that, Chancellor Carroll, thank you.
Good morning. I'm delighted to be here today and to serve as chancellor of a growing university campus with an unusual vision. We have two areas of distinctiveness. First, our academic programs are specialized in developing talent for the health and life sciences sectors. And second, our research on learning innovation is contributing to much needed change in higher education. Evidence is driving results. Importantly, as a startup public university campus in a city of unmatched care and innovation, we know that our place matters. I'd like to introduce our campus to you with a short video.
Decades before its launch, bold citizen advocates had a vision to create something groundbreaking on the banks of the Zumbro River near the world-renowned Mayo Clinic. Their dream was to design a vibrant campus that could nimbly address the pressing talent needs of this health-focused community and the state of Minnesota in collaboration with many partners. That dream became a reality 16 years ago, and what we like to think of as the University of Minnesota's startup health science campus has been growing, adapting, and innovating ever since. Our unique approach to education and our location in America's City for Health attract a passionate and compassionate student body. UMR students strive for careers that will make a difference in the health of their communities and the world. And we strive to discern and provide what today's learners need to be ready for tomorrow's health careers. We are educational entrepreneurs creating exceptional learning experiences that couldn't happen anywhere else. There has been joy in the journey of this mission-driven startup, with national attention for our innovation and successful outcomes for all kinds of learners. Our graduates are proof of concept, out there making a difference in medicine, mental health, research, biotech, and more. UMR graduates make us all proud. We've reached an inflection point where more resources will take our startup to the next level. The need for healthcare professionals has never been greater. The need for innovators to lead change in higher education has never been more critical. And the need for new academic programs in digital health is expanding exponentially. UMR's innovative campus was built to meet this moment.
I'm getting my foot in the door and seeing things that I probably wouldn't be seeing on any other campus.
A big part of my UMR experience is my research with Mayo Clinic. I just finished my physics class, and after this interview I'm going to walk there and start doing my experiments that I have been working on.
Shortage of healthcare workers is really prominent, and I've seen it in the workplace, I've seen it on the news, I've seen it everywhere.
Everyone here, even if you just share a class together, will build each other up. We're there for each other and we understand that we're all in this together.
we've created a scalable education solution to address the rapidly evolving talent needs of the healthcare ecosystem. With partners and investment, the University of Minnesota's Health Science Campus in Rochester can be even bolder. Now is the time to scale. The journey continues, and together, with your support, we can achieve more for Minnesota and the world.
The Rochester campus of the University, yes, agreed. The Rochester campus of the University of Minnesota is ready to expand our programs and facilities as we move through the first bold enrollment target onto the bolder target of 1,500 students, and then onto our boldest target, 2,500. Our Campus and Climate Action Plan has been approved by the university's Board of Regents, and our enrollment growth for fall 2025 is exceeding expectations. We are the University of Minnesota's Health Sciences campus addressing dire workforce shortages. A recently completed independent economic impact study by Trip Umbach determined UMR's annual economic impact is $89.9 million already and growing. As a startup, we live by three principles that, when taken together, further distinguish us. Students are at the center, research informs practice, and partners make it possible. The second principle, research informs practice, generates high levels of student success with active learning and industry-informed curriculum. That third principle, partners make it possible, is an imperative if together we are to optimize the collective opportunity this place of Rochester, Minnesota provides. Now, this is a very busy slide representing a very busy downtown. Partners have made it possible at UMR thus far, including development partners, Titan, Mortensen, and others. We currently lease 6 shared buildings across downtown Rochester. You can see those are in maroon, including the Student Life Center, a renovated hotel, University Square, shared with shoppers in the Galleria, 318 Commons, home to many, including our faculty and students, 1 and 2 Discovery Square, with cutting-edge life sciences companies right next to our classrooms, and residents at Discovery Square, housing upper-class students. The university also owns land near Soldiers Memorial Park, with some of those parcels purchased with City of Rochester support. And we're so grateful to our wonderful city and all of those who have supported the launch and startup period for UMR. You can see here that we have not built campus facilities separate from the community, but rather have designed a campus that is physically embedded within the community, ensuring students are in walkable proximity to opportunities to contribute as community-engaged learners, part-time workers, research interns, and more. My imagination has been invigorated recently by the idea of bio-inspired design. More than a replication of the form and function of a single organism, bio-inspired design can also help us think about structuring partnerships differently as we consider the natural ecosystem. Think about the interconnectedness and vast contributions of fungi, for example. If you haven't seen the documentary, you need to. In Rochester, we are collaborative, and yet there is so much more that we can do. Consider the interconnecting needs: housing, childcare, workforce, and the potential symbiotic solutions. We are working toward a robust talent pipeline, economic engines to complement our Mayo Clinic centerpiece, the well-being of people and planet, ideas, invention, moving from startup to testing to market, intergenerational interaction for health, and more. As we think about next stage expansion, I am asking, how might we dream, design, and flourish together? As one piece of the ecosystem, what does UMR need next as we move toward 1,500 students served. We need active learning classrooms that could be embedded in the research and clinical spaces throughout downtown, adjacent administrative offices and support spaces, consolidation and expansion of our labs with our learners in proximity to other labs, both corporate and startup, faculty-student interaction space with small offices around a central collaborative area, ensuring connections across disciplines and roles. We call this an academic house. A gymnasium for intramural recreation we could share with other downtowners. A gathering space branded for the UMR community. We are so distributed, and we need a heart to our campus. And finally, a space to share our cutting-edge, achievement gap-closing educational discoveries with other educators. All told, our current estimate is about 150,000 gross square feet. But wait, there's more. As we tour hundreds of families through downtown Rochester, they stand at my office window and look out at Peace Plaza and the plumber and the Gonda, and they are in awe, inspired by the context of care and innovation. Then they ask me about safety and life as a Rochester downtowner, and they ask, what will we do for fun? So may I say, we also welcome additional venues for affordable indoor fun for students. Such options will help us continue to expand our enrollment. And remember, every student recruited expands the needed talent pipeline. We are most definitely grateful for the events that happen in our Chateau Theater, the work of the Rochester Downtown Alliance, of READY, of every effort to expand the arts, of our parks expansion, and the DMC's many initiatives, including the wonderful Discovery Walk. After we hit the 1,500 mark, we'll need additional housing space, and for that, we're imagining an intergenerational facility with seniors, health sciences students, and childcare, and embedded community services for enhancing well-being and enhanced mental health. And in all of this expansion, climate action is crucial as the university aspires to carbon neutrality by 2050. In all future leases, we'll be keen to connect to planned thermal energy networks, and other university green lease guidelines will be available soon. As you would ask of any partner, you may surely ask, what is UMR ready to do in addition to providing a world-class education to our students? Well, we're ready to contribute to the common good by living our principles and values, to attract and develop human potential, to continue to expand our economic impact on the region, to design and launch industry-responsive academic pathways, to consider community needs in our design and programming, and overall, to bring youth, energy, capacity, and future workforce to downtown Rochester as a vibrant component of a flourishing ecosystem. The Rochester campus of the University of Minnesota is moving onward, keeping students at the center, ensuring that research informs practice to fuel student success, and working with partners for a flourishing economy and society. Thank you so much for your interest. And next, let's welcome Bridget Avakainen. She serves as the administrative lead for Bold Forward Unbound in Rochester. She also has a broad range of administrative responsibilities in all three of Mayo Clinic Shields, practice, education, and research. She was vice chair in the Department of Administrative Services at Mayo Clinic in Rochester. She holds a Master's of Business Administration from the University of St. Thomas. And did you hear that first part? She is the lead for Bold Forward Unbound. Let's welcome her. Bridget?
Well, good morning. Wow, that was quite an introduction. Thank you, Chancellor Carol.
Appreciate very much. So thank you, first of all of you for being here. We're grateful to have this opportunity to continue our collaboration and share some of the exciting developments and opportunities that are happening at Mayo Clinic and what those opportunities may bring to you and to our trusted and loved community of Rochester, Minnesota. So Rochester, not surprisingly, has a strong network of leaders across the nonprofit, the public, and the private sectors, all who are deeply committed to the city's continued success and ensuring that the region remains thriving and fertile ground for new business and those for seeking professional advancement and economic development. We have great representation of those leaders in this room here today. The nexus that drives us all together to collaborate is that we call this area home. It's home to our families. It's home to the organizations that we serve and lead. We care about this community. Our collaborative spirit is rooted in a shared commitment to the city of Rochester and its future. Teamwork and collaboration are central to our culture at Mayo Clinic. Those values run through every part of the organization. It's how we make decisions. It's how we work together. It's embedded in who we are. It's part of our blood. It's really part of our DNA. We're driven to collaborate because we are stronger together. Rochester, no doubt, is on the brink of unprecedented, as said before, unprecedented growth fueled by the confluence of factors, including Mayo Clinic's bold, forward, Unbound in Rochester investment, the University of Minnesota's planned expansion, the city's proactive development strategies, and the ongoing success of the Destination Medical Center initiative. Bold, forward, Unbound in Rochester represents the largest capital investment in Mayo's history. It's a testament to our commitment to Rochester and its future. This isn't about new construction, although we talk a lot about new construction. It's about transforming healthcare and expanding a vibrant and thriving community that attracts and retains top talent, fosters innovation, and enhances the lives of our patients, our staff, and our visitors. This project, coupled with DMC's focus on infrastructure improvements, job creation, is actively reshaping our downtown. This is creating new opportunities in housing, technology, and businesses with the growth of the hospitality industries, the development of new public amenities, and the rise in downtown living, and the creation of innovative spaces like 1 and 2 Discovery Square. And just how exciting. All of these projects are an investment in Rochester's future, and we're excited about this area continuing to grow as a destination for hope and healing for many, many years to come. Mayo Clinic is the number one hospital in the world for 7 years consecutively. We are the world's first and finest and largest integrative group medical practice, and as a global authority in serious and complex disease for over 160 years. We are a leader and an innovator in healthcare. There are a lot of dynamic things happening right now as we build this future from a position of strength. I'd like to share a little bit about Mayo Clinic's 2030 strategy called Bold Forward, and its 3 pillars, which really grounds our Bold Forward, Unbound, and Rochester investment. Each of these pillars is built on a commitment of innovation, and most importantly, an investment in our people and giving them the tools and the environment that they need to succeed. Cure is about accelerating discovery and optimizing the latest advancements in serious and complex care. This includes new medical therapies, surgeries, procedures, as delivered in the physical, the digital, and the virtual environments. Connect is the long overdue digital transformation of healthcare. It's connecting people and data to create new knowledge and deliver scalable and end-to-end solutions As an example, often patients who come to Mayo Clinic have been on a healthcare odyssey of their own that involves many providers, numerous tests, multiple different entities. They come with medical records that would literally encompass reams of paper. We're working on new digital tools that will help assimilate, organize, and draw out the most important points for our clinical teams so that they can pursue the right answers for our patients much, much faster. And Transform. Transform is focused on creating a new future for healthcare by creating its first scalable AI-enabled care transformation platform, leveraging both data and knowledge and technology to redefine the delivery of healthcare. A true centerpiece of our bold forward strategy is that this investment in all of these activities is happening here in Rochester, Minnesota. We're investing $5 billion in new construction in downtown Rochester. This project is called Bold Forward, Unbound in Rochester. It's our Mayo Clinic vision for the future of healthcare infrastructure. The goal of Bold Forward Unbound in Rochester is not simply different buildings, but it's radically better spaces that bring our teams and patients together in an environment that is designed to transform the patient experience, advance our teamwork, and create more cures and improve outcomes for patients. And I think who say it best are our teams, our staff at Mayo. And so with that, I'd like to also show a video.
There is no place like Mayo Clinic where every decision, every piece of what you do from the moment you come to work is to meet the needs of our patients, and they come first.
I wouldn't be here if they had not gone to bat for me. Mayo's team and doctors open up as many opportunities as possible for patients to get better, and that's why I'm here.
This teamwork works for everybody. Most of us live somewhere else, and yet we can get treated here by the most excellent doctors.
We can do it all. You know, Mayo can start here in a lab and, you know, create something from the ground up.
The exciting part is that the future is always uncertain, but our goal is to discover what that is and lead it for the next 10 years, 20 years, 50 years in healthcare.
I'm very excited about the transformation that's coming because it gives you something else to shoot for.
I am so excited to be a part of Mayo Clinic history, and I'm proud to watch Mayo Clinic make an investment that is impactful in all of our futures.
Who we are is no different from who we were formed to be. What we do will change, but who we are will not change.
Describing the future of healthcare at Mayo Clinic comes down to the word hope. Hope for patients, hope for those of us who are working on these important challenges, hope for all.
That video never gets old. Bold Forward, Unbound in Rochester will continue to advance our strategy to cure, connect, and transform for the benefit of patients everywhere. It will reimagine our downtown campus with a combination of innovative care concepts, new digital technologies, and new facilities that will give Mayo Clinic the ability to scale transformation in ways never imagined and reshape the next generation of that Mayo Clinic experience, both here and anywhere. Every aspect of Bold Forward Unbound in Rochester considers the needs of our patients first, not only for the patients that we see today, but also those patients that we'll see 100 years from now. As you know, the project is a complex portfolio of interrelated projects, and I'll just give a high-level overview of the portfolio here as shared on this screen. But we will be building 5 new buildings and then related investments in infrastructure and utilities, each with a future-proofed, future-oriented design philosophy. The new buildings, as shared earlier, will total 2.4 million square feet of new incremental space to our campus, and that it will be infused with the latest technology to improve the delivery of care. The structural and architectural elements allow for future growth. In fact, our day one investment can support vertical expansion of these spaces to basically double in size. And our modular design and our flexible grid will allow us to seamlessly adapt to the changing needs of patients over time. So spaces that could be hospital rooms can convert to procedure rooms, to ORs, to interventional suites, to diagnostic or laboratory areas very seamlessly. Specifically, we have 2 primary clinical buildings that are shared in the center of the slide with the Waterman and Osmond site, directly connected to the Mayo and Gonda buildings at every floor. We'll have a number of floors that will have flat connections across. You'll see that signature space of the skyway level, that'll be a 2-story sky bridge connecting all of those spaces together. We also have 2 new arrival and parking facilities that flank the campus both to the north and south. We're spending a lot of time thinking through that arrival and departure sequence for our patients and our visitors. We'll also have a state-of-the-art logistics building that will be on the west side of our campus, directly connected by underground tunnels so that we can leverage automation, robotic movement of materials and supplies, really allowing those clinical spaces to be focused on direct patient care. And then again, as mentioned, the utility expansion and modernization to support our campus with sustainable power, heat, cooling, water for our downtown buildings. But ultimately, the physical and digital vision for Bold Forward, Unbound in Rochester is about bringing teams and patients together in new ways, specifically designed to advance teamwork, collaboration, revolutionize the patient experience, create more cures, and improve outcomes in a way that's only possible at a place like Mayo Clinic and a community like Rochester, Minnesota. A bit on the timeline, the where, you know a little bit about the what, but here's the when. In 2023, our Board of Trustees approved the project, and we held a large public announcement that included the Governor of Minnesota, who was actually just here earlier this week, sharing his support for the vision, the project, and the city of Rochester. In 2024, much of our time was spent on enabling works, we call them, getting sites ready for demolition and construction, and updating critical utilities to support the continued advancement of the campus. Now, in 2025, demolitions are making way for construction. We're beginning on the West Logistics Center later this year, and we'll be clearing the Waterman site where the Damon parking garage is located. We've also started construction on the new arrival and parking center to the north of the campus, and will likely start the south parking and arrival center to the south later this year. In 2026, the parking and arrival centers will be completed, and we'll have a newly remodeled Gonda and Mayo East entrances. And onward, similar to University of Minnesota Rochester, in 2027, the new West Logistics Center will open and begin serving the downtown campus. And in 2030, new clinical buildings will be activated and open. Bold Forward, Unbound in Rochester, again, is more than new buildings and constructions. It's about transforming healthcare. We know that it's not simply enough to build new and better spaces. Through Bold Forward and Unbound in Rochester, Mayo Clinic will transform the way we deliver care in order to anticipate and meet the future needs of patients. We'll also elevate our staff experience by unleashing design and technology to increase satisfaction, reduce those burdensome tasks, and create more time for our staff to be with patients and focus on the things that matter to them. As we're going through the design process, a few transformational areas are coming to the surface as we continue the planning. One is neighborhoods. We're focused on dynamically, digitally in neighborhoods, clinical care neighborhoods that will centralize care teams and services around the patient to provide that category of one patient experiences. We're leveraging human design elements as we think about creating these smaller scale environments for patients, creating a warm and welcoming environment while they're here at Mayo Clinic. These spaces will also use natural materials, have access to sunlight. We're thinking of winter gardens, And then interconnected public spaces that will allow areas for staff and patients to find respite and to create that calm and welcoming environment, as well as leveraging technology that will continue to increase our multidisciplinary model of care at Mayo Clinic. We're also looking at predictive supply delivery and AI technology so that our teams have the right resources at the right time at the bedside. Teams in pharmacy, linen and central services, and Mayo Clinic Food Services are already exploring how to do this today in our current environment. And then, as I mentioned earlier, focusing on that enhanced arrival and departure experience. We know all of this work will have an impact well beyond Mayo Clinic. And this project, like any other in Rochester's history, the scale of the investment dwarfs that of any in other mid-sized cities, as well as in the state of Minnesota, perhaps maybe even in the country. Our work with the Rochester community is critical as it relates to the construction and labor force. We're projecting as we project over the next 5 years. The anticipated peak of construction is scheduled to be approximately in that 2027, 2028 timeframe, and we estimated about 1,500 skilled or trade workers working across the campus to bring this bold forward vision to life. As we prepare for this demand, Mayo Clinic will continue to work closely with the local trade groups and external partners and stakeholders to ensure a strategic approach to sourcing the labor that's necessary for this vision. And when we announced the project, we anticipated that these innovations that are fueling Bold Forward Unbound in Rochester will also help fuel a larger workforce attraction. Other mission-driven innovators will see that what we're doing and want to be a part of transforming healthcare too. This is already proving to be true both in terms of talent and business and startups attracted to pursue innovations right here in Rochester. And it's not just doctors, nurses, and care providers, it's researchers, it's biopharma, it's administrative professionals, it's engineers, it's project managers, it's tradespeople. We are hopeful that this investment will continue to have a direct and halo effect on the workforce attraction across multiple industries here in Rochester. Transforming healthcare will require creative and new approaches to train a workforce that's ready for the future. And we're exceptionally lucky in this region and in Rochester to be home to such strong higher education partners. We're also collaborating in new and creative ways with the city, DMC, and developers to prepare the Rochester community for growth, particularly around housing and transportation. West Transit Village is a great example of this collaboration and partnership. It's the mixed-use plaza-style development on the existing site of Mayo Clinic's West Shuttle Lot. The development, which is expected to open in late 2026, will include a 2,500 stall parking ramp for Mayo Clinic staff connected to the city's future Link Rapid Transit system, but plans for the West Transit Village include much more than just parking and transportation. The site is also primed for the potential build of at least 2 affordable housing options, each of which would benefit from the access to dynamic transportation, retail, restaurants, and other recreational amenities envisioned for the area, setting the stage for millions of dollars of future mixed-use investment and benefiting the broader community of Rochester. So in closure, 100 years from now, when we look back at this era of Rochester, we'll think of it as a pivotal time in our history. And honestly, together, we couldn't be better positioned to take advantage of this historic opportunity in front of us. And with that, I thank you, and I'll turn it over to our host.
Excellent. We are going to go to break here in a minute, but I guess I just wanted to emphasize, I hope you heard the same thing I heard, which is Destination Medical Center is leading a global business development project and program to help bring new employment to the city. the city of Rochester has overhauled how they approach development to make it more predictable, more affordable. We've got a university that is growing by leaps and bounds, reinventing the way higher education is delivered. And we've got the heart and soul of this community, Mayo Clinic, undertaking a massive development that is going to continue to make sure that this community is a leader in all things healthcare. So we have a lot to be excited about. I think there's a lot there that points to future growth in this community and really highlights the need of this community when it comes to building new housing and new development. So we're going to take a quick break. I would encourage you to network with your fellow attendees, visit our exhibitor booths in the lobby, and at the end of that, we'll be back for our innovation panel to talk about technology-enabled housing and what that means for the future of development. So thank you.
Yeah. Everyone have a good break as you get settled back in. Hopefully you got to meet someone new and talk some business, learn a little bit about what's happening in Rochester. Well, welcome back from your break. My name is Megan Flanagan. I'm the Executive Director of ULI Minnesota. And let's see, who are my ULI folks in the house? Can you raise your hand if you're a ULI member? Excellent. So if you're not familiar with ULI, the first thing I will say is when you're on a tour or during one of the breaks, find one of those folks and ask them about their ULI experience. What I will tell you about ULI is that we are a global nonprofit with a mission of shaping the built environment for transformative impact in communities worldwide. And that's a mouthful. But what it really means is that we have a group of passionate, intelligent members who are really committed to making their communities a better place through their work as developers, designers, investors, lawyers, urban planners, or any other sector that touches the world of the built environment. Last week, I was talking to one of my members, and I said, you know, what separates ULI from other organizations you're part of? And what he said is ULI is about thought leadership and solving big problems. And I really love that because it means that our members really want to dig into the meaty issues that are facing us all today. And just this morning, someone came up to our table out there, and if you haven't visited our table, please come by during one of the breaks. And she said, "Why are your programs always so interesting?" And then my response was, it's because our members are interesting. Our members are, again, that cross-sectoral nature of who comes to our table and has those conversations means that our discussions are richer and the better for it. So I would encourage you, if you're not familiar with ULI, please check our website, minnesota.uli.org, or again, talk to one of the many wonderful members who are here today. All right, and now that I'm done my commercial for ULI, we will move on to our next program. So, DMC is interested in bringing paradigm-shifting housing developments to Rochester, both to create new housing supply, which we've all heard is vital in our community, while also proving that new models of development can be successful in this market. So DMC is especially interested in supporting projects that are bold, forward-looking, and innovative. To this end, they have undertaken a process to identify new development opportunities that deliver on that vision, while at the same time leveraging Rochester's unique market position as America's city for health. So one such concept, commonly referred to as technology-enabled housing, focuses on helping an aging population live healthier lives at home by accessing their health care in new dynamic ways and ensuring their senior years are safer, last longer, and facilitate a better way of living. So here we have a panel of experts who came together to discuss this concept in more detail. And so each of them will come up and give a presentation on their area of expertise, and then we'll have a Q&A for all the panelists. So start thinking about your questions and jot them down as they come up to you while the panelists are speaking, or you can also put them in the app and we'll get them from there. So our first speaker is Dr. Christina Chen. So Dr. Chen, please come up to the mic.
Thank you, Megan. I'm just going to move this up. I'm a little taller. It's nice to see you all. I must say I've never spoken at a real estate conference before, so this is refreshing to be in front of a non-medical crowd, and you are all much more fun. So I'll just say that. I'm really happy to be here. I'm happy to be part of a conversation where I'm very passionate about the environment, how it influences our health, I think there's so much we can do for older adults living in the community right now, because I'm seeing them in the clinic. I see a lot of health outcomes that are not very favorable, and there's so much we can do to empower them in their healthy aging environments. So I wanted to share a little bit about that with you today as far as clinical considerations in the healthy aging environment. So I know that we all are aware the world is aging, right? I don't know if you are aware just how rapidly this is happening. By 2030, for the first time ever in all of history, older adults are going to surpass the number of children. So it's coming up in the next 5 years. And by 2050, things are just going to exponentially increase, and we're just not ready for this type of change. As the world changes, we have to be ready to change with it as well. 77%, almost 80% of people prefer to age in place. They want to live in their own homes. They want to live in their place of comfort for as long as possible. And as a clinician, I want to honor that, right? I want to help them stay in their own homes where they've, where they raise their children, where they want to be able to grow old with their spouses. But it's challenging because at some point they can't live there anymore if it's not safe or if it's not sustainable. And so we try to bring in as many resources as possible, try to bring them in, home health, physical therapy, but eventually as their health declines, they often have to move to a different state of living or a different type of environment. And that's really hard for me to see. Because we are all aware, the home is where the heart is, right? That's the saying that we're used to, but home is really where the health is. Our living environment shapes our outcomes. Our living environment impacts our health in so many ways. We wake up in our own comfortable beds, right? We have our routines. We're all here because we have purpose, and that's something we want to maintain. Where we live, how we take care of ourselves, and how we communicate, how we connect with our society and our community shapes how we enjoy life and our well-being. And so how can we create that for the aging population for as long as possible is the question and the task that we are all here to try to tackle. And so the question that I ask my patients a lot is, what is healthy aging? I encourage you to think about that too. What does healthy aging mean to you? And the answer I often get is, well, I don't want to live with disease. I want to be disease-free for as long as possible. I want to live as long as possible. I often get a few people who say, well, you eat well, you sleep well, you exercise, you die anyway. You ever hear that? So why put in the effort even to do that? But the shift that I want to change in people's perspectives is the difference between lifespan and health span. Yes, we all meet our end at some point, whether it's 70 years old or 90 years old. That's our lifespan. That's easy to define. It's a set number. However, health span is something we can control. Health span is the number of years we live as well as possible. Okay, so we can live until 100 years old, that's great, but if we spend half of that time in a high state of disability, symptom burden, inability to take care of ourselves, that's not a good quality of life. So we're trying to change the perspective to not just lifespan, but the quality of that lifespan, which is health span. I want you to live as long as possible, as independently as possible, in good state of health, in your most familiar and most comfortable living environment. So that really changes our perspectives. How do we think about healthy aging, and how do we do that successfully in the home? There are many common threats to health span that I see. The biggest one is falls, because falls, it just takes one bad fall to break a major bone, your hip, your spine, and then you're in the hospital for who knows how long, you're getting surgery, and then you're in rehab, whether you can do rehab at home or in the nursing home. But rehab is not a good place to be because you need to get back to your baseline, and so many people don't get back to the baseline. They end up permanently disabled. Dementia is a big one. If you can't think on your own, if you can't remember to do things, eventually your body cannot sustain itself, right? So dementia is a very common reason why people end up in assisted living and then move on to memory care settings. Living with many chronic conditions, diabetes, heart failure, lung disease, because that influences the amount of medications that you take. The more medications that you take, the more side effects you potentially may have, and the higher hospitalization risks. And then you need more people to come in and support you, right? So to live independently at home, it takes a lot of effort. You have to make sure that even if you do live with disease, that you are living well with it and that you have the support for it. Undernutrition is kind of a hidden risk because we don't often realize that over many years, if you're not getting your nutrition intake, you start to lose weight, you start to become weak. Well, that leads to the falls and injuries, right? So it's a vicious cycle. We need all of these pillars to be optimized as much as possible. Environmental hazards are huge. I do a lot of home visits, and I have seen just crazy stories, but the hazards can be, just the living environment, it can be dangerous. So it's either healthy for you or harmful for you. Poor lighting, a lot of throw rugs, oxygen tubes, trip hazards. All this makes a difference and again leads to falls and injuries. I've seen people with hoarding conditions, they're tripping over their pets. They are just not taking care of themselves, and it's a very vulnerable adult situation. So these are all common threats to our health span. Again, not lifespan, health span. So falls. I'm just going to highlight the biggest one here. Falls. We see this very commonly. 1 in 4 older adults will fall every year. Eventually, a quarter of you in this room might fall, if not already. So why does this keep happening in older adults, though? There's a lot of different reasons. It's not just one. Okay, so imagine if you're living with baseline arthritis, muscles are a little bit weak, you have many medications that you're taking, perhaps you have sensory loss, you can't see very well or hear very well. All that in combination puts you in a very vulnerable situation. And if you just have one day where you're dehydrated, you don't drink enough water, blood pressure drops, boom, you fall. And we see that over and over in older adults because they're just more vulnerable. So there's a lot of technology solutions nowadays for fall detection, which is sensors, right? Wearables. I just bought my mom an Apple Watch for Christmas, and I have her wear it just in case she gets lost or she falls and she needs to call someone. But all these medical alerts, these are all ways to detect a fall. If something happens, we can get to them earlier. But when a fall happens, my saying is it's too late. And it's too late because a fall happens when the body becomes weak over time, and it's usually from immobility. If you don't move, 1 or 2 days is fine. If you don't move well for months or years, eventually the body can't sustain itself, right? So the bigger question is, how do we not just detect falls? How can we prevent falls? And how do we keep people moving if they are spending 90% of their time indoors? If you look at any sort of home design, apartment, blueprint layout, they have all the essential things: a bedroom, a living room, a bathroom, kitchen, laundry, things that we need to survive day to day, just to live well. But I have never seen a senior living environment that promotes movement and exercise. There's only so much you can move in that little space. There's not a lot of space. There's not a lot of flex space, I'd say, to promote exercise, activity, things that you enjoy, that brings you purpose. If I could design an apartment complex, I would add in an exercise space. It's probably not the best location here. It's next to a staircase, but every room needs to promote movement of some sorts. Okay, because right now, if you go to long-term care and senior living communities, they do have an exercise space, but it's a communal space. You have to fight Gladys, who's on the news step, for an hour, and you have to sign up and make sure that Carl's still on the other machine, and eventually you're fighting for the same space. It needs to be individualized, which is what I'm not seeing enough of in the current living environment. Because over time, this is what happens, our muscles shrink by 50% if you don't move. Try imagining getting up from your chair with half your muscle mass. You're going to fall over. Gravity is not our friend. So we have to keep moving. And this is for all of us, too. We just have to keep moving, right? Even more so in the aging population. And so I guess the biggest debate is, what is the optimal aging environment? We try to create safe spaces for people. This is kind of like the current design principles of aging in place, right? We have these safety devices. We've got ways to try to promote safety and fall detection. We try to promote an area where there's maximum function and accessibility. A lot of senior communities have social structures to promote community engagement, and there's a new one here that has a pickleball court, which is great. We're trying to get people to get out and meet people and play pickleball together, which is all great. But is that enough? And the technologies, there's many, many different layers of technologies between how do we keep the environment safe with all these sensors and emergency controls, these environment controls, how do we promote health and wellness in the living space, but these are all in silos, and it's really cool to see what's been developed over the years, but it's complex to put together, and it's complex to use. It's hard for people, like an older adult, to figure out, how do I even put this in my house, and how do I use it? So I've seen many situations where a home has an Alexa and a sensor, and maybe the family members set it up because they're tech savvy, and the older adult doesn't know how to use it. They just know it's there. They'll say, Alexa, and eventually Alexa will just stop listening. So we have to create technology in a way that is user-friendly for the older adult, not just who's setting it up for them. So that's something we haven't really figured out, is how do we make the smart system actually smart? So I like to keep it simple. And as we are thinking about housing and environment, let this sort of be a lesson for ourselves in this room too, is what is the best healthy aging atmosphere? And to keep it simple, is these are the 5 core pillars of well-being. We have to have a healthy brain. Cognitive health is the most important. If you don't have a healthy brain, your body's not going to work, okay? Cognition, physical function, keeping our bodies moving and functional, active, independent. Nutrition is key. We gotta take care of ourselves. Good diet, good nutrition, hydration, resting when we have to, when we should, and purposefulness, connection. These are the core pillars to healthy aging. If we can do all of these for as long as possible, that is what I define to be wellness, okay? If any of these core pillars are lacking, eventually things will deteriorate. And if we have this framework in mind, use this core concept to create a healthy home. And how do we do that is kind of the biggest question that we're all working together to solve, right? Is if we can optimize our brain, our physical function, nutrition, sleep, and purposefulness. Can we do that in the home? Because the core concept here is independence. Can we do all this in an automated way to promote routines? We all have our own routine right now, which is simple to do because we've got good brains and a good body, hopefully, all of us here. But if we can keep doing that for as long as possible, without having to be reminded, without having more cares brought into our home, if we can maintain that independence as much as possible, that is the key. We'll learn later on that there's a lot of things in research that can promote sleep health, like just simple lighting solutions, automated shade, sound solutions. All these sensory options can help with sleep promotion, but also promoting optimal physical function, which is looking at the space, like just remodeling the space so that it can promote sustainable exercise, and then also strategies to promote that purpose and connection. There's also a role for telemedicine, I think, and there's a lot of work looking at can we make an adaptable space so that it can be sort of like a hospital at home model, where when things do need more healthcare attention, we can bring some of those aspects, healthcare aspects, into the home. And I think that's still a lot to explore, but try to keep it simple, because I think when we try to solve for so much, it gets too complex. We have to come back to the core pillars of what is healthy aging and how do we sustain that in the living environment. So I just wanted to share a little bit about what I've been doing, kind of taking these core concepts, but really focusing it on cognitive health. And so over the past 5 years, I've been doing more research on the dementia care room of the future. How do we improve our brain health and sleep health, and through reminiscence therapy and through lighting solutions to help people who already have advanced dementia so that they can live well, and to restore that purposefulness and joy back into their lives when their brain is already not as healthy anymore. So this is just to share with you that clinicians are also trying to innovate in this space. We are trying to do what we can, knowing kind of the science behind things, to bring it into the environment, because again, if we can help people live as well as possible in their current living space, that will solve a lot of problems. And so I'll just leave that thought in mind for you right now as we move on to our next speakers. Bruce Thompson is the CEO of Urbaneer, and I've had a chance to meet Bruce over the past couple weeks. Just a really brilliant talented and creative guy. He's done a lot of great projects over the years, and I hope to see him with a large footprint in this as we create, hopefully, a new standard to healthy aging living.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chen. And I'm excited to be here today and share a vision for a tech-enabled age-in-place home. And to do that, created a persona named Mary to illustrate the market needs and what our market demand really, and what are Mary's needs. So everybody meet Mary, Mary meet everybody. And let me tell you a little bit about her. So she is living solo, 62 years old, recently moved to a tech-enabled age-in-place home in her daughter's backyard, actively engaged in her healthcare journey and entering a new third chapter career as an interior designer, helping others to downsize. And I think Mary really represents a growing trend in the market, and it kind of reflects on what Christy was talking about, is people really focused on their health span versus lifespan, and taking charge. And really, there's an old adage: solve your own problem before somebody fixes it for you, because you might not like their solution. So proactively downsizing, moving into a home that is safe and able to respond to needs as her needs change, I think is what it's all about. And I want to say to all of us that are developers here, a significant opportunity. And we heard earlier from the city of Rochester, there's a need for about 1,000 homes to meet this market. Nationally, there's a shortage of 500,000 units. By 2030, that number is going to be 800,000. So that doesn't go away regardless of recession, economic conditions. So big opportunity for everybody. So how do we address then Mary's needs and accommodate those? First and foremost, we want to put Mary at the center. We want to use human-centered design to think about living experiences and then how those spaces support those experiences. And so often in the design community, I think, and this is not a judgment, it's just a perspective, we design the space first, and then we think about how the people are going to, the individual, the resident, is going to actually use that space. So by putting Mary at the center, thinking about the living experience, and then thinking about the elements that we have in our toolbox, we have physical solutions and we have digital solutions. And we want to integrate those together to create the best possible living experience. Technology is often an afterthought, which I think is again, part of the challenge, and we need to think differently about that. Also, I want to encourage us all not to think about purpose-built environments for technology. I know that's one of the questions that's going to come up later. It was submitted in the app. And I'll share more about an approach where we can do a modular solution to be able to upgrade technology as things change. So by putting both of those elements together to an integrated living experience, the first thing we want to focus on is an adaptable environment. So if I'm 62 moving into a home, and the real estate industry refers to that as the forever home, there's certain things that I want to know can be addressed later, but I don't necessarily want to consider them today aesthetically. Specifically, think about the bathroom. The bathroom is probably the biggest hurdle for aging in place, and one reason, as Christy said, 80% of the population wants to age in place. 10% of the homes are adaptable. 1% have already been converted. And so when you think about those numbers, there's a big mismatch, hence the opportunity to create more housing. But in the bathroom specifically, we can create a curbless shower that's large enough to accommodate a walker or wheelchair at the right moment. And we can put blocking in the walls for grab bars, but maybe it's not something that Mary wants to look at 62 years old, but she knows it's there. The second thing we can do is start to imagine a home that learns, and learns our patterns, learns our behaviors. And when we think about data in the home, on average today there's 20 smart devices in your home. 6 gigabytes of data per hour is generated. And it's not just at home, it's everywhere we go. And that's a staggering amount. It's the equivalent of 7 CD-ROMs. And so how can we make that data more helpful, but do it in a way that's respectful of an individual's privacy and not necessarily Big Brother? And I think all of this should be opt-in, by the way. Some people are comfortable with technology, others not. But there's a way that that environment can start to learn our patterns and help others intervene to keep us safe. And the example I like to talk about is many of us have had aging parents or grandparents or aging friends, and we go over and visit them, and then we compare notes. I know in my own family, a couple years back, my brothers and sisters and I would take turns. We have busy schedules, but our parents are important. And we'd often sit once a week for coffee, and we'd say, hey, did you notice something with mom, or did you notice something with dad? And that is really great. And I'm not saying we should not continue to do that, but computers can recognize patterns, because that's what we're doing. We're recognizing patterns and trying to, again, intervene to keep people safe. But sensors specifically that can see, smell, and hear and watch, spatial computing can watch that environment, can put together correlations much faster than the human brain. We're forgetful, we're subjective, and it's infrequent. Now, when you start to learn or think about that for things like fall risk detection and intervening sooner before it's too late, because often we can't fix the problem after it's occurred. The other thing that we can do with data is not only focus on Mary's data set specifically, but we can compare her against a larger population. So imagine if there's 10,000 Marys in the world, similar profile, or if she has an acute care issue, we can run her data set anonymously through a technique called federated learning, so we're sharing insights, not the specific data, and maybe see something way ahead of what normally could be predicted. So we can go from prevention to prediction, and I think if we look at the next 10 years, somebody said to me recently with AI and data, we're going to see more change in 10 years than we've seen in the last 100. And I know it's kind of scary sometimes when we think about AI, it can be a scary word, but I look at it similarly to electricity 100 years ago and how that transformed housing. And if you read back some of the historical examples, there was talk that everybody was going to be electrocuted in their homes. And maybe that did occur through the adoption process. I'm not dismissing that. But again, it's a tool, and it doesn't replace human intervention and those social connections, but it's a new tool in the healthy aging process. The last thing we want to consider in terms from a design perspective is how can we create a home that cares? And what I mean by that is the hospital at home has been talked about quite often as solving the not enough hands problems. We just don't have enough people specifically for an aging population. So we need to think about how the home can address outpatient procedures, and again, that has to do more probably with mobility issues than anything else, but there are sensors that can pick up data, remote diagnostics, but also for treating acute care in the home. And specifically to that, we want to think about things like remote diagnostic equipment needs power. What if the power goes out? We need backup power. What if the internet goes down? We need cellular connections. So all of that is important, again, to encourage people to move earlier into a home that is age-friendly, they can age in place, and they can literally care for them as they age. So this is Mary's accessory dwelling unit. So imagine this again in her daughter's backyard. This is approximately a 700 square foot footprint. And when we look at space, by the way, I just want to make a point. We've been working over the last 10 years probably in about 700 different units, and so I have a strong opinion on how much space is really appropriate, and it's more of a perspective and point of view, so take it to that point. I believe 600 to 700 square feet per person is adequate. 2 people, 800 up to 1,000 square feet. And just to put that in perspective, in the 1950s, the average family of 4 lived in 1,250 square feet. Most of them, survived that family experience. There's always challenges with sharing bathrooms and bedrooms and such. I shared a bedroom growing up. But it's more about the efficient space layout and the floor plan and where that home is located. And what I mean by that is if you have walkability, if it's a multi-generational setting where there's a primary residence, we can be really efficient with that space. And when we're talking about backyard accessory dwelling units, in this case, we have to be space efficient. By the way, the city of Rochester commented earlier, very friendly to ADUs by right, so zoning does support it. I think it's a great, one of many resources that we need, but a great resource for aging. And the way that we are starting to look at designs like this, and we've got experience with modular construction where it can literally be plug and play, and it can be tech-enabled from day one. We can reduce the construction time by 50% through a modular approach, and for many backyards, it's very easy, again, to put that into place. On the right, you see an inspiration image. I think it's very important if we want to compel people to move out of their homes earlier in their health journey. We want to create spaces that are accommodating and attractive. And there's so much research that's been done about environmental psychology of natural light, and I'll talk more about that in a minute, light color, paint colors, all the things that go into making an environment friendly and inviting. Another element, and just to illustrate where the physical and digital elements come together here, when we talk about falls and fall prevention, there's some really exciting innovation coming along, and there's a flooring product that we've identified through our network coming out of Japan, and they're now going to be producing it in Georgia, fortunately. And it's a subfloor product that actually collapses when somebody falls. So the subfloor absorbs the shock of that fall versus your bones. So in Japan, there's studies that have shown in some senior living facilities, they've actually eliminated fractures, and others significantly reduced it. So as Christy said, falls are a tough point for people, and again, you can't recover often from that. So if we can reduce the impact of a fracture or eliminate a fracture, and then we can add technology and to actually monitor when that individual's fallen, now we have a really integrated physical digital solution that can tackle a really big problem. And one of the things when we look at various technologies, and I just had a friend share this with me recently, their mother-in-law fell, had a pendant, knocked unconscious, couldn't push the button. So she laid there for 3 hours until she became conscious and could do that. So with technology, we can determine a fall, we can have audio into the residence to be able to communicate with that person through potentially a smart lock system, then we can access that home. And it's just putting it together in a very thoughtful way so that we can intervene and address issues as they occur. Now this specific floor plan I want to share, we actually are going to build this as a test home in Rochester within the next 12 months. I'm determined to make that happen. And it's going to be an environment where we can bring a technology ecosystem together to show people what's possible, and then also have various groups conduct research to understand people living in that environment and how they're reacting to it. The approach we're going to take is we're going to pre-engineer solutions so that we can optimize that living experience. And what I mean by that is think about HVAC systems, lighting systems, again, the flooring system I mentioned, and there's others. We're putting together an ecosystem where we can understand how we can best collaborate, and then as we put that in as a modular capability in the home, it's easier to update later versus one-off solutions that we don't understand how they work together. So excited to see this come together, so stay tuned, more on that. And one of the inputs that we're going to be using for this home is, all right, we're collaborating with the Well Living Lab. Well Living Lab is based in Rochester, for those of you that don't know. They conduct peer review research regarding, both in the home and the lab, that's demonstrated that things like circadian lighting, so personalizing the lighting environment based on your biofeedback, how to improve sleep, cognitive function, and mood. Also, daylight and biophilia, bringing nature into the home to reduce stress, enhance mood, satisfaction, and performance. And then automated air filtration, which is so key to reduce harmful indoor pollutants, improve blood pressure, and lung function. The EPA has actually designated indoor air quality as one of the top 5 pollutants in the US. And as we age, we spend more time at home, so it's more critical than ever. So we're very fortunate to be working with this team. Some of the research that's going to be, the new research that's going to be conducted will be done by the Well Living Lab, and I think it really is going to help the entire industry to kind of look forward to changes that can take place in the home. So the last item I want to touch on is, we've talked about data, we've talked about the 6 gigabytes of data that's generated. How do we bring it all together to make it meaningful? Because data by itself is sometimes not helpful, most of the time. So we need to take the insights, as I talked about earlier, through federated learning, and really think about 3 categories. First is Mary's health, her safety, and again, pattern recognition there, and then also the health of the indoor environment. And we're developing a wellness dashboard that has a rating system, so various stakeholders, whether it's a clinician, family member, or a friend, can look at this on a daily basis or whatever frequency, and again, get the insights that they need to care for Mary and intervene earlier in a cycle. I spoke recently to a clinician, and they were talking about a case of somebody with a respiratory issue, and their comment was they had no idea really, unless they go into the home and see, they don't know certain things like humidity levels that could have a huge impact on that person's health, and they're trying to treat them without the data. So again, this is a way to bring it all together in a way that's respectful of data privacy and the individual's privacy, sorry, but then provide those insights again to those people that need to have that data. Another point that's really exciting, and this is kind of a new phenomenon or development, is the ability to take that data and create a data co-op. And this is where I think there's an opportunity to monetize data, again, in a respectful way. And it could start to get towards health equity because data has value when it's part of a larger population. And if we think about the number of people in industry that make money off our data, we don't. And anytime we use an app, you know, nothing's free. We are the product, so to speak. And so I think there's ways to really transform housing or healthcare to look at data in a different light, and it's an exciting frontier ahead. So stay tuned, land it here as we look towards building our test home. Again, I think this is a massive opportunity to create the forever home, and thank you for the time today, and I'd like to introduce Ken Bach, the CEO of Lakewood Holdings. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, organizers. It's only now that I realize how limited that description of Lakewood Holdings is that I gave to you, so my apologies. My daughter, we have a daughter, she's 9, and she was asked to give a presentation in front of the school assembly, and it was to write a Where I'm From poem. And you're supposed to say, you know, what your ethnicity is, how you grew up, and there's a section where it says, I'm from different professions. And she says, you know, I'm from a family of doctors and lawyers and policemen and whatever it is my dad does, which is pretty right. So my background and why I'm standing up here is I founded, operated, invested in 13 startups, mostly across healthcare. Been lucky enough to exit 10 of them, and have had the great fortune to run investments, venture philanthropy for a number of ultra-wealthy families, mostly in Chicago. But the reality is, and why I'm standing here is, I'm just a mutt. I'm a mutt of different disciplines and technologies and areas of interest, and I'm such a believer and a fan of what this stage represents, which is a true multidisciplinary approach, which is what is necessary, in my humble opinion, to enable the future of wellness and of health. So in furtherance of the theme set by Christy and Bruce, I'm going to walk you through how real-world technology today is really improving the lives of older adults, whether they're aging at home, in assisted living, or somewhere in between. And these are not futuristic concepts. They're already being deployed, scaled, and delivering measurable outcomes today. So the 3 examples we'll look at are smart homes, AI wearables, and telehealth. So a first example is the integration of smart health systems, and I just picked a few examples. There's one called Serenity, and if you pair it, for example, with Alexa Emergency Assist, what these tools do is they monitor daily routines, things like meal prep, sleep patterns, bathroom visits, and then they detect patterns from the norm. For example, if there's no activity in the kitchen, this may suggest skipped meals, which could be due to illness, to depression. And what's powerful here is this passive nature. See, they don't have to push buttons, they don't have to wear wearables, and this data creates a behavioral baseline and alerts caregivers if something seems off. And it's about enabling safety, enabling independence without being intrusive. The next example are AI wearables and in-facility monitoring. In care facilities, we're seeing tremendous impact from wearable AI like CarePredict and room-based AI like Safely You. By the way, all the companies that I'm mentioning here, I don't have stakes in them. They're just, again, examples. CarePredict learns each resident's typical activity. For example, how often they walk, how often they socialize, and flags when something changes. Safely You uses AI cameras to detect falls instantly, then sends alerts to staff, which dramatically reduces response times. So studies have shown up to 69% fewer falls, 40% fewer hospitalizations using these tools. And the main takeaway is if you embed these technologies into daily care routines, it leads to better outcomes. And again, this is not the future. It's working in facilities right now. The third example is telehealth and RPM, remote patient monitoring. And let's highlight examples like Cadence, like the NHS's National Health System in the UK. They have something called Health Call. And here, seniors use connected blood pressure, coughs, glucose meters that actively transmit vitals to care teams. And if you combine that with regular telehealth visits and check-ins, what you effectively have done is really brought the clinic to the home. And for chronic conditions like heart failure and diabetes, early detection means fewer ER visits. One program saw a 40% reduction in ER visits. And this is especially game-changing in areas that are rural or for those with mobility challenges. It's real access in real time. So why does this matter? It matters because if you look at the technologies collectively, the outcomes are clear. Falls down 69%, hospitalizations down 40%, even loneliness reduced by 95%. We didn't really talk about it, but there's a pandemic of loneliness, and if you guys remember R2-D2 from Star Wars, there's this little robot that's called LQ, and it looks like sort of a younger version of that. But we're moving from reactive to proactive care, ideally from episodic to continuous support, and from just having a physical home to something that is functional, that is part of the care journey. And all of this is powered by data that is collected ideally passively, analyzed in real time, and then turned into action. So let's think about and put a framework on data as the core. And it really illustrates how data is reshaping care for older adults from the ground up. Let's start at the bottom. Data makes care personal. If you track individual trends like blood pressure, like sleep or mood, you can tailor care to each person's unique needs and routines. Moving up one level, data becomes predictive. With AI and trend analysis, you can now detect subtle changes like rising glucose or reduced activity, and that these things can signal health risks before symptoms even appear. And then at the very top, care becomes smart. Real-time monitoring enables immediate action, adjusting medications, scheduling a visit, or simply just checking in, often preventing hospitalizations altogether. And data is no longer, one should think of it as no longer just a record of the past, but it's really the engine that drives better, faster, more proactive care and aging in place. So let's take that framework one level down and ask the question, well, how do we think about how the different parameters have to integrate? So integrated systems here are absolutely essential for supporting older adults as they age in place. So first, these technologies, they have to enhance safety, detect falls, monitoring vitals, or alerting caregivers to changes before they escalate into emergencies. Second, protect dignity. They use discrete, unobtrusive tools that provide oversight without undermining independence. Third, they foster connections. They keep caregivers, families, clinicians in the loop through real-time updates so everyone is working from the same information. And then finally, they promote autonomy, allowing seniors to remain in their homes and communities longer, supported by systems that adapt to their needs. And when these four elements work together, we move from a reactive care to proactive, empowering environments that truly support better aging. So in closing, at the heart of better aging is a simple formula. Technology and data ideally will lead to a better aging experience. It starts with collecting the information, ambient sensors. You can monitor movement, you can monitor sleep, you can monitor temperature, and other daily patterns without being invasive. Then analyze. You analyze this data using AI, machine learning, ideally uncover meaningful health insights like identifying early signs of illness or detecting changes in mobility. And then most importantly, you have to act. Act on these insights. Care teams can intervene earlier. They can engage family members, often preventing more serious outcomes before they happen. And this cycle of collect, analyze, act, it's how we transform these passive houses into smart, supportive environments. And when done well, it means not just living longer, but living better, safer, and more independently in the places that people call home. So I would like to, in transition to Scott, argue that there's actually a fourth step, which is, yes, you've got to collect the data, yes, you have to analyze the data, and yes, we have to act on the data. And it's great we're talking about the clinical needs and the design aspects, but at the end of the day, we have to build something that makes sense, that provides and acts upon this information, and then also is sustainable. We can talk about what the ideal looks like, but if the numbers don't make sense, and that's why I get so excited when you have all these different disciplines in front, you have to plan that from day one. That's the only way to get there as far as I know. So with that, it's my joy to introduce a friend, Scott Goodman, who will talk about Build and all the experience he's had in this.
Well, thank you, Ken, for summarizing my entire presentation in your last paragraph. First of all, thanks to the DMC for inviting us and including us in this presentation today. It's an honor to be with everybody here, and to hear what's going on in Rochester is just truly remarkable. And to have an anchor tenant like the Mayo Clinic is obviously a huge asset. You know, as a real estate developer, we're always looking for our quality anchor, and there's no better one than Mayo. But to see how the city and the DMC and others are working together to make Rochester just an incredible environment, coming from Chicago, where it's a little harder to get things done, to hear how willing the city is to work with the developers is really, really encouraging. So we're anxious to do something up here as well. My name is Scott Goodman. I am a partner at Farpoint Development in Chicago. We have done significant work with technology companies in Chicago as developers. We did Google's Midwest headquarters. We did McDonald's global headquarters. A lot for eBay, a lot for many others in Chicago. So we have a real preference to be working in forward-looking companies. My grandfather used to tell me that he wasn't afraid of death, but he was afraid of dying. And what he meant by that is he lived to his ripe age of 96. He was just always just frightened of his quality of life and how that would deteriorate over time. And that's been a little bit of a guiding light for me as we've worked on our development, as we've done our work in multifamily. In Chicago, the city bid for the 2016 Olympics, and they didn't get it, but in the meantime, they bought a 50-acre hospital site on the lake next to our convention center, McCormick Place. And we were lucky enough to be the lead developer and the team that was awarded the development rights for that site. And it was actually at that time that I met Ken, and together we developed a concept to really establish the healthy community of the future. And what was really a fact that was stunning to me is, having grown up in Evanston, my life expectancy was 30 years more than somebody who had grown up on the south side of Chicago. So, you know, as Bruce likes to say, that's like a year for every block south that you lose in life expectancy. And we just know that's not okay. And we started looking at the reasons for that. And so many of those things that were talked about today already are reasons that we started to identify. And clearly, poverty is a big factor. We all know that. But really, it's the living environment and what we can do to make it better. So as we studied what we call Brownsville Lakefront, which is the former Michael Reed's Hospital site, we really found that through technology, we can start to really make a better and safer environment. So much of just aging in place is you have to age. And we found that just in Chicago, crime is obviously an issue, poverty is obviously an issue, maternal health is an issue. We started really identifying all these areas. And then as we worked with the community to really engage them and find out what they felt was important on the site, the number one product type that they asked us to develop first was senior housing. And they really felt that there was a real dire need that their parents, as they were growing older, especially on the near south side of Chicago, they didn't have a place to really put their parents and really make sure that they were taken care of. So as we started to delve more into that, we formed our healthcare real estate division, and we really started working with a lot of hospitals in the area, in Chicago in particular, a lot of medical groups, and it's become a real area of expertise for us, and we have found that we almost can't keep up with the technology. We almost can't really, as we're building, we just find there's something new every day. And the hospitals, they're trying, and they're trying to innovate as well, but so many of them keep doing things the way they've always done them. And we think that's something that we have taken on as a real goal to work with them and to become their easy button so we can really be their eyes and ears in the field and really help them as we build both medical office buildings and care centers as well to find out what's out there in the market, and that's what we're endeavoring to do. So the way we do that is really through collaboration, and it's collaborating with groups like this that we hope to do in the future, where we could not be more excited about doing something up here. The idea is to form a consortia with the folks up on stage here and maybe get that module thing that Bruce was talking about built up here as soon as possible, and that's the idea, and really create a model that we can really replicate throughout the country, and we think there's a real need for that. So to become a branded multifamily independent living, aging, age restricted buildings would be fantastic. In multifamily today, the biggest trend really has been amenitization and really what you're providing to the residents of the buildings. And there's the obvious things, right? All the health centers, people have arts and crafts rooms now. They have daycare, and they have all sorts of things that really are more geared towards hospitality. So apartment buildings are becoming to look more like hotels all the time. And we think that's a great model. And we have to continue to innovate that. In real estate, it's always that money thing, though, because you always have to figure out a way to make your income sufficient to cover all these amenities that you're working on. So when we talk about all the technology that we want to put into age-restricted housing and in places where people can better age in place, we really have to put that puzzle together. And that might mean coming up with different profit centers in the building. One thing we want to do in these buildings is create a telemedical lab where you can actually go downstairs, and if you're not feeling well that day, you can dial up your doctor or have technology there that can take your blood pressure and there's a plethora of things that can happen within that lab where you can get instant feedback and instant access to your medical team. Those are the type of ideas that we see going forward that really can make these buildings friendlier to the aging, to those who are aging in place. And the biggest part of it, though, is socialization. And as somebody, we talked about loneliness just a second ago, and we really need to create good community spaces where people can interact. We also talk a lot about what can be in the units and what the units should be designed like. We think dimensioning is important, ways to, Chris was talking about the falls, ways to make sure you're never too far from a wall, for example, and make sure that furniture is not too close or too far apart. Things like, very common sense things, the sensoring, the radars, all those things that can monitor your movement and your general health and to make sure you got out of bed that day or that your temperature is normal. Things like that can all be done without intrusion and can be opted in, and things that we would like to figure out how to incorporate into apartments, not only to make aging in place better, but to give us a competitive advantage as well. We do think that with the population aging so rapidly as a percentage, this is the type of housing that's really going to become attractive and where we as real estate developers can make a real difference. We talked about data a minute ago. In real estate, there's something called LEED certification, which was a standard based on sustainability. I think all those real estate people in here know it well. And that used to be a real focus 10 years ago. That's all we talked about was getting LEED certified. Are you going to be a gold certification? Are you going to get a platinum certification? What can you do? That's kind of not even really talked about anymore because we do that anyways. The technology and our building standards have caught up to that. And I think we need to do the same thing with data collection within these buildings for people's health. And we need to really create metrics, and we need to really create standards that can really help people have a much greater quality of life. So I think my job here is to really put the real estate perspective into everything that my co-panelists have talked about today, and really talk about the challenges and the challenges that are both monetary and in terms of making sure that we can afford to put these into the dwelling units, but also the challenges of which technology and how to do it in a way that keeps people's privacy, that creates the best information available, and really allows people's quality of life to be as best as possible. So I think I'll end it there, and I think we'll move on to question and answer.
So I think some of my biggest takeaways from what we heard over the last hour is that where and how we live is the most important factor to our well-being as we age. And that it's really important as we think about tech that we're putting the person at the center of it. So we're building tech around people's needs and not slotting people into tech. And then also, this is not something that any one sector or any one discipline is going to be able to do on its own, but that it's really important for us all to be collaborative and take a multidisciplinary approach to the aging in place, which, as was mentioned earlier today, we're all going to be there. So investing now in these systems and technology will be beneficial for all of us. So with that, we are going to open it up to questions for our panelists. I know we have some mics in the room. And so I see one back there, so don't be shy. Does anyone have a question to get us started?
I have a question. I think it was brought up that modular construction can be done faster. One of the questions that I have with the comments that were brought up earlier about the need for housing is what can be done to increase the speed to market?
Yes, we've had experience with modular construction over the last 5 or 6 years. And on average, there's a 50% reduction in construction completion time. And let me explain in a little more detail. There's more work, pre-engineering work up front to achieve that. But once the unit goes into production, so the accessory dwelling unit, for example, that I referenced, that could be produced in 4 days in a factory, and it would be about 60 to 70% complete. So by the time it hits the job site, there's additional work to be done, but as that unit's going through a factory, the site work is being done. So that's where you start to gain those efficiencies. But one of the things that's important to stress, and this was new to me when we got into this in 2019, I assumed building in a factory would cost less. And as I learned quickly, it's the same people, it's the same material. There's some process efficiencies, but by the time you transport something to a site, you've lost some of that. So it's the pre-planning, again, where you get those efficiencies, and then it's really, I should stress also, it doesn't work in every project. It works really well where there can be some standardization, not necessarily in the aesthetics, but again, in kind of the sub-assemblies that go into that unit. So multi-unit buildings that can be 4 stories on a podium, because with wood construction, you can only go up to 4 floors. Those units can be done, or that type of project with modular is great. Taller than that, it's a challenge. There's a company out of New York called Assembly OSM that's doing steel frame construction and going taller. So there's some innovation coming. Anyways, I'll land it there. I could go long on this, obviously, but that's probably...
The other 2 things I'll just say about that is the quality control for modular construction is much, much greater than it is on-site construction. You have a controlled environment, you have very set standards with how the work can be done. Oversight is much better. But as Bruce said, there really is no cost savings. There's significant time savings when it comes to that. But and again, there's not things like weather delays and things like that. So it's
but from a financing perspective, saving that time, getting rents accelerated, there's a financial, yeah.
I've got a question from our app over here. It says, as we build out our ecosystem to help people optimize their health at home, it seems that collaboration versus competition has never been more important. can you comment on the state of the union regarding collaboration going on across the housing industry? And are we better positioned in Rochester than other communities across the country for that type of collaboration?
I'm not sure I understand. Collaboration amongst whom?
I think, well, like you all, for example, I think bringing the various disparate parties together, from the clinician to the technology expertise to the people that actually know how to build it, it seems like in this specific type of development, that type of collaboration is paramount, and I'm just curious if you'd comment on that.
Yeah, my feeling is this is rather unique. I don't think there's a real collaboration among home builders or developers with groups like this very often. I think we are talking about a specialty here, and a real concentration on technology that I hope is unique, and I hope is groundbreaking, no pun intended. But I think that collaboration, I don't know that that's, there's always collaboration with developers and architects and contractors, but never with sub-disciplines like this, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just one thing quick. I got into the construction development world about a decade ago from technology. And the one thing that really struck me was on every development project, it was like it had never been done before. You were bringing groups together that typically hadn't collaborated, and you were creating a one-off, right, a snowflake, as they say. In the tech world, we always kind of approached it from a systems integration standpoint. We had a partner ecosystem, and the solution was customized, but the gazintas, right, the inputs were kind of known, and I think that's a really important thing that in Rochester, I think the friction is being reduced to accelerate the pace, and I think given the challenge here, I think there's potential to see a level of collaboration that just is unprecedented.
One thing I will say, though, is on the Brownsville site in Chicago, for example, we have spent significant time with folks like Johnson Controls and others like that, seeing what technology they had in the offing. Things like you can tell by somebody's gait whether their health is changed at all, and sensors that do things like that. So some of those kind of companies definitely we collaborate with to find out what's in the marketplace, but I think a group like this is unique.
So, Christina, have you seen any collaboration? Have you undertaken any with developers or builders related to your work?
Not with developers or builders. I have collaborated with technology companies just as a medical advisor as far as, is this solution going to be helpful for you as a provider, taking care of people who are going to be end users of this, So I think it's improving. There are more collaborative efforts, but this is truly unique, Scott, like you were mentioning. I have not seen the developer side of things collaborate with the clinical, and it needs to happen because that's the only way we can make a meaningful difference. I remember when I was building my dementia care room, I went to one of the local construction companies here, and they're like, why are you here? Why are you doing this? Because there's such a disconnect between our expertise and what these guys do, and we can't make any difference without having everyone on board to do their part. So,
if I may, sorry about that. You have a center of gravity here that people should be made more aware of, meaning you have a lot of momentum with Mayo, with what you're doing, what all these disparate groups are doing, and the fact that we're just in this room right now. That is not a normal thing, number one. Number two is, although there are other, what I would consider to be smaller epicenters, places that are trying to do these things, we have the advantage of starting from day one, knowing that we have to have these multiple disciplines together. And the reason I say that is it gives us an opportunity to have really hard conversations now. And let me give you an example of one of them that I do think is going to happen. The entire space of healthy home or healthy building, truly functional in terms of enabling your real estate, that is going to require so many different conversations because so many people will own certain different segments. And one of the hardest conversations will be when the players have to realize it's better to share. And the example I always go back to is, we're all we're all sitting in here, we all have Wi-Fi. Did you know Wi-Fi was at the very beginning 4 companies that realized if they donate their IP together, they can do better downstream? Right? These are the conversations that I think we should all be prepared to have, and have the elevation to see the problem and think about the problem, so that we can not only enable what we're all envisioning, but can do so where, and again, I'm a strong believer in sustainability, which means it has to be profitable for each of these different groups. And the only way to do that is to go into that system, eyes wide open, which requires collaboration at this scale. So again, I think you already have the momentum in this area. It is special, and I mean that in a very, very, very good way.
Thank you. Okay, I see a hand in the back.
Thank you for your insightful conversations. I represent RCTC, and I'm just wondering, how much have you thought about collaborating with community colleges, universities to help with this? And just like to hear about your experience.
I can jump in. So we live in Traverse City, Michigan, and we are working with the local community college there, Northwestern Michigan College. And they're very focused on, well, nursing is a big discipline, of course, as a lot of areas, because there's such a shortage. But there's a new program that's emerging around data and training people in biomed capabilities around data and data analytics. And I think that really is some cutting edge work. We live in an area which is, there's a local hospital, Munson Hospital. We're one of the largest rural healthcare systems in the country. And that presents a whole nother level of challenges. And I know, Ken, you've had some experience there with rural health as well. But that is one thing that the community colleges, again, has recognized, that we need to train people differently for specifically data, and then, of course, AI from that.
In Chicago, we have a number of community colleges that we have an affiliation with, that we bring. Nursing is one of them, but also just different disciplines that we work with. We find great value in that, and if we were lucky enough to do something here, we would love to work with you.
I'm a firm believer that it really takes a village and a community to drive change, and it comes from all levels of learners. You know, I, as a clinician, I also teach. I work with medical students, and we welcome all skill sets and interests and people who are willing to be part of something big like this. You know, so I'm all supportive of all that.
Just to quickly add, and I realize I just should leave this thing on. Technology enables the decentralization of highly complex knowledge, right? And it allows you to scale. So as we look at the problem and the challenge of how do you enable people to be as healthy as possible at home, I would suggest, and I'm sure others more intelligent than I would suggest, let's just look at it as terra rasa. What do we want to achieve? How do we use the resources, even if it's non-traditional today, and how would we reconstitute those pieces in a type of kaleidoscope to end up with the system that we want?
Excellent. All right, our next question.
Good afternoon. Thank you, guys. So my question is more, how are these technologies going to be priced? And then my second question is, within these different system integrations of technologies being used for the age-in-place homes, where do you see the interconnectors in regards to the built landscape in terms of revenue? Who's going to be purchasing the federated learning data? That's going to be, what a good example is the product that you mentioned that's coming from Japan, that's subflooring, and then connecting that physical product to being able to predict, predictive modeling when someone falls, and connecting that data. Is that data being connected into the cloud? Who's purchasing that data? And then also the different systems in terms of the smart technologies that are being built. Where is that being priced in regards to the end buyer who has to purchase these homes?
Great series of questions there, really, right? But you hit on some key themes. I can't answer all of that, but maybe a little sliver. I think one of the things we see typically with technology adoption curves is as innovators, we apply new capability over the existing processes of what we know, right? I didn't say that very eloquently, but 100 years ago I talked about electricity. And if you look at factories in the day, the early 1900s, factories were powered by steam. So buildings were factories were vertical. Hot air rises, and so, raw goods came in, things moved up to a 3-level building. In fact, that's the first Highland Park Henry Ford factory or Ford Automotive was built that way. And then, things were craned down. And when electricity came along, there was this productivity paradox where we didn't see huge gains until Henry Ford and Albert Kahn teamed up to build horizontal factories. They had to have clear span construction, and we saw this massive productivity boom in the 1920s. Similarly, that happened with computing in the 1980s, and there were a lot of studies done in the late 80s, early 90s, questioning all the spending on technology and whether we were really seeing the productivity boost. And then we went through business process re-engineering, the internet occurred, or it didn't occur, it became commercialized and scaled. And again, we saw this massive surge. So I think we're at a point today where, and that's why we need this collaboration, our current approach and system to how we look at construction, how we look at healthcare, they're all siloed, and I think we need to start to think differently. And part of that, and this is the last thing I'll share, is we need different business models, because you hit on something. Some of this capability going in is expensive, and so a developer like Scott has to make a project pencil out. Well, maybe there's an ongoing revenue stream, and one thing I had to learn in construction 10 years ago, a term, first cost. And then the second term I learned was value engineering, right? So if everybody's trying to get their money out of, so to speak, of a project, and when a building opens, it's challenging, right? I mean, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, if I can jump in. So you're flagging one of the biggest problems at this point in time, which is we're going to have a number of technologies that we want to put in. But the fact of the matter is a lot of these companies, I'm sorry, I'm looking this direction. I forgot where you are. Thank you. They want to keep their data, right? They want to keep it solid. They think that's the end all be all to value. And that's the beauty of why we're sitting in the room right now, which is we get to set what that standard is. We get to set the story, which we all firmly believe, which is it's not just the fall data. That's great, and that's incredibly useful. That's great, and that's wonderful value. But you know what's actually of higher value? When we mix that fall data with movement data, with frequency of X, Y, Z, and all together, that data set together, which is something that we are here to ideally lead and put together, that's when things get super, super interesting. I'm sorry?
Would that be the financial model for the data?
Yeah, so that's my whole point, meaning the financial outcomes of that combined data set are likely to be higher in value, and therefore the sharing of those revenues, that is something that we are all going to together have to figure out. You're flagging the exact right thing. Why I get jazzed up about this is we're doing it proactively as opposed to reactively 10 years from now.
But I'll add that the turf war, that is the turf war, because Amazon and Apple and every device you have in your house already that is collecting free data from you today, they don't want to give it up. They are already monetizing that. So to Ken's point, maybe if we can give them additional ways to collate that information, that would be someplace that we could maybe have a revenue source.
If I can just give you an exact example. So part of my life is spent in the world of Alzheimer's. And pharmaceutical firms, they're doing great research right now. They're trying to translate that into research that can then be used for drugs. Obviously, they're doing it for more than just moral reasons, for example. But to them, getting access to a patient that has one parameter of data on them, for example, it's called a digital cognitive test, that is one value. But if you give them a patient that has a digital cognitive test plus biomarker data, the value of that goes up. And that's like a 3 to 5x. So I firmly believe that there are ways to start to think about this. I'm not saying that that's the way we'll end up, but there definitely are precedents across the industries.
Right. I think we have time for one more question. So I see a hand back that way.
Oh, too much to think about. So a couple of you have said that this is
no cost savings, even though it's a different way of building and doing modular. My question to you is why not? The baby boomers are just going to keep coming. People want houses, the affordable housing is an issue. Is there a reason that we can't expand and have this be such a competitive market, but you still have it profitable, that we can have some cost savings?
Can I ask, I'll add on a layer, cost savings to who? So, again, going back to where I began, my daughter has no idea what I do and basically thinks I go and have dinners and chat with interesting people, which is pretty much my life. So one of the dinners was with a group of people. We were talking about exactly this, and one of the ideas was, and this was brought up by the CEO of a massive insurance company, well, if you prove to me that if there are two people, one lives in standard housing, another lives in a tech-enabled or focused on wellness and has clinically validated checkpoints that show definitively, hey, if you live in a space that actually has XYZ, you are more likely to have and promote better wellness, better health. You should actually save on your insurance premiums. That came from the CEO of a massive insurance company. So I do think that at some point, there will be savings overall at scale. I think it would be super fun to just riff off what you said and figure out, well, where do we get that savings now? Because I just don't know where that is.
And the other thing that we haven't considered is different levels, right? There's going to be there's income levels that people can afford, and the amount of technology obviously increases exponentially as you can afford, greater monthly rent, for example. So I think the amount of data collected at a higher level is actually worth more. Unfortunately, it benefits the people who have more money, and there's a paradox in there someplace. So we need to figure out the business model, and that's the challenge that we all have together. And frankly, that is the value of this consortia that we're trying to put together and figure all that out. And that's the unanswerable at this point.
And including literally everybody in this audience, we do not have the answers. We know we have the motivation and the desire, and please do accost us after to do so. I will regret saying that word, but yes.
Excellent. Well, please join me in thanking our panelists today for this fabulous discussion. And since the invitation has been given to accost them, I'll let you know we are going into lunch and networking time. So lunch is available via a buffet in the lobby. And please use this time to, to make those connections. Because as we learned today, we're going to need to work together to solve the challenges that are ahead of us. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Sorry to interrupt all the great conversations going on, but I think we're going to get started here in just a moment. If you could take your seats. Wonderful. Well, welcome back after lunch. I hope you have all been enjoying the program of the day so far. We're just going to have a little bit more before we're going to hop out and actually get into the streets of Rochester and go on some tours. So I'm happy to say good afternoon. I'm Catherine Wallenberg. I'm with the Destination Medical Center Initiative, where I focus on our public infrastructure investments and our strategic partnerships with selected private developments. And I'm joined here with Josh Johnson from the City of Rochester, where he directs strategic initiatives. And we work very tightly together in terms of any developers and investors that are looking to learn more, share opportunities. This is really, you come to Josh and we get things started. So we're going to share a little bit about some of these investments and the opportunities around them, and we're going to kind of tag team it here. So I'll get us started. Let's see. So one of the sort of core ways that the DMC works is that we have public funds that we invest in public infrastructure that is intended to catalyze and support the transformative growth and change in the city that we have been spending today talking about. And you've seen a little bit about a lot of these projects earlier today, but DMC funds to date spent on public infrastructure investments in the city of Rochester are around $300 million. So as the city shared earlier, they've invested even more incredible amount here in Rochester. And the DMC portion of some of those investments totals about $300 million in our first 10 years. So DMC started in 2015 and we're nearing our halfway mark. And here are some of the biggest ones that are really on the horizon, and Josh is going to share more about those, but the Link Rapid Transit investment that you've been hearing a lot about today, and that is one of the tours that you can go on and see that corridor and therefore see all the sites that exist along that corridor. And then the 6th Street Bridge and the sort of transformative opportunities along the riverfront, which actually, if you look out the windows here from the Civic Center, you can see a lot of those opportunities as well, but we'll orient you a little bit to both of those, which are key DMC investments that we're doing in partnership with the city. So with that, I will hand it off to Josh.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks, Catherine. Josh Johnson, work for city administration. So yeah, just going to cover really high level a couple of really exciting opportunities that we've got. One being Link Rapid Transit projects. So that's a 2.8 mile bus rapid transit system that we've mentioned throughout this summit. So construction is actually going to start on this summer. Anticipated opening date is end of 2026, 2027, beginning of 2027. So a lot of exciting transit-oriented development opportunities along the route. Some stats that we received in a study that we've conducted a few years ago give you some highlights right there of the opportunities. We've also seen a significant uptick in interest along the route and working with several developers that are in this room right now to really make that a multimodal, walkable, transit-oriented corridor. One of the projects, speaking of transit-oriented, is we're undertaking a 6th Street Bridge project, which also includes riverfront improvements and neighborhood safety enhancements. So 6th Street Bridge is off of 6th Street downtown. The intent of this project is really to unlock the potential of the 60-plus acres of right now service parking lots that consist of the former Ampey Dairy Co-op and the former Kmart site. These are not city-owned sites, so we're working with private entities, Kmart, who is owned by Pat Regan and his family, as well as Mayo Clinic, who own a large portion of the northern half of that project. So 6th Street Bridge is going to connect that whole area. We're also doing riverfront improvements. If you've noticed throughout this summit, we often have the riverfront in a lot of our drone images, a lot of our presentations. So it looks really good from afar, but we want to make it look even equally as good up close. So getting people to connect down to the riverfront, making it accessible, creating entertainment options. So that's part of that project, as well as doing safety enhancements throughout the neighborhood and connect better with the Riverside Elementary. So these are just some renderings of the potential promenades entertainment district to promote that future investment and development. As I mentioned, this couldn't be possible without the partnership of both Kmart and Mayo Clinic. So with their involvement and investment, we created a downtown waterfront southeast master area plan, which you see some of the housing statistics. We could take this from what right now is about around $31 million in potential or current building value and increase that to $260 million in building value. So a lot of potential here to repurpose this currently vacant site used for service parking. Another really exciting opportunity is, and I know a lot of people have been eagerly awaiting the release of the RFQ for this site. So these are the two riverfront-owned sites. You actually overlook them when you're in the exhibitor halls. So we've got the Riverfront Reimagined Zumbro East and Zumbro West site. These two sites encompass 5.5 acres that are also currently being used for service parking. So here's just an aerial image. You can see the west site, which is approximately 2.5 acres, and then the east site, which is approximately 3 acres. We also went through a riverfront small area plan that was approved in 2022 for these two sites. I encourage you all to go out and take a look at that. There's a lot of really good planning and conceptual information in that document. The goal is to release the request for qualifications for this in about the next 6 months. So I'd say quarter 3, quarter 4 of 2025. We're really waiting for, the market to be the correct time, as well as get through some of the other major projects that we've got underway. The request for qualifications, the intent of that is, it's a city-owned site, but that really means it's a community-owned site. So when we are working with a partner, we want to really engage with someone that's going to be collaborative and work in partnership with the city, DMC, as well as the community to really help shape that. This is a concept that was out of the small area plan. You can see that we're really looking at offering a higher density development on the northern portion of the site, really having more civic open uses in the central area to connect to the historic 3rd Street, and then a lot of different unique opportunities on the south side with some selective demolition and repurposing of the current Legends building and former Owl grocery store. And I will let Catherine go into the privately owned opportunities.
Thank you so much, Josh. So we are also interested in trying to highlight what privately owned properties might also be available for partnership or investment. We received from one of the groups that we reached out to, this multifamily development land site that is for sale. So if you're moving out of town on 2nd Street and getting to 52, it's just on the other side of 52 along the bus rapid transit corridor. And this is who you could reach out to if you wanted to learn more about that site opportunity. But what we're also doing today is if you have the Whova app and you look in there, there's a prompt, and we're really looking to see if there's interest in building, and DMC could facilitate more connections between people who either are landowners looking to find partners or vice versa. And so there is a prompt if you have other properties that you are representing or are interested in seeking partnership on. I encourage you to enter that in the app, and so we can start that dialogue here today and people can make those connections. So maybe next time we all come back together, we could have a whole sort of slideshow of different opportunities and partnerships that people are looking for, and we can facilitate those introductions. Was the idea here. So please, if you're new to town and you just want to learn more, I'm sure there are people who would be happy to connect with you. So please do utilize that in the app. So I think with that, we're ready to move on to the tours. Unless you had anything else?
Yeah. I will just add for any of those in the room that want to be notified when we do release the RFQ for the riverfront sites, my email contact is on here. Please reach out to me anytime. I'll put you on the distribution list and get you notifications. And then just one last plug, I'll also be leading a tour for Public Realm, so I hope to see you there. Thanks.
Well, thank you all so much. So I'm going to tell you a few administrative things about the tours. So we have 4 tours that you can choose between. There's time for 1 tour, so you get to pick 1 of 4. And if you look in the app, you could sign up there, but you didn't have to do that. I was just trying to help us right size, and we'll do our best to accommodate the groups that want to be on each of the tours. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to exit out the doors here and go to the right, and you'll see down at the end there'll be 4 different boards, and you go to the one that you're interested in participating in. So those options are a walking tour of where Mayo Clinic's Bold Forward Unbound investment is taking place. So you've seen the renderings. Now you could walk the perimeter and understand the context around that investment. And Jamie Rothy from the DMC will be leading that tour, and we'll be joined by several other colleagues. So you'll have lots of people to help answer any questions. And then there's the Transit-Oriented Development Tour that Irene at the city and myself will be leading. So get on a bus and we'll do the route of that corridor, and we'll stop at either end and get out and talk about the development opportunities along either end of that corridor. So that's the TOD corridor tour. And then, as Josh mentioned, he and Mike will be leading the Public Realm Investments tour. So that's a walking tour, and you get to see opportunities within the DMC district for public realm investments. And then finally, we have a retail-focused tour that one of our partners, Lee Kruger, who's in the room, will be leading to talk about what opportunities exist in the downtown for retail. So hopefully among that range, you will find something that gets you out there and seeing these sites in the wild. And then those tours will conclude back here, and we'll have a networking reception out here. And you all have drink tickets, I believe, on the back of your badge. So I really encourage you all to come back and conclude the day with that additional socialization and networking opportunity. Thank you.
Really want to thank everybody for joining us today. I hope the event met your expectations. Appreciate you coming back for the reception. I want to quickly introduce our Platinum Reception sponsor, HomeLink. This is Sean from HomeLink. They agreed to sponsor this event for us tonight, and so I want to just introduce them, thank them for their commitment to the Real Estate Summit and for sponsoring this event. So, Sean?
Thank you. Special thanks to Mike Flynn and the DMC team for putting on a fantastic event. We're certainly a proud sponsor to all the innovation that's taken place here. Just want to spend just a short, brief minute on who HomeLink is. Many of you might know who HomeLink is today. We're part of the connected vehicle. So when you look at your visor or your mirror or maybe your car console to open up your garage or do things within your home, it's a simple button within your car. So we've been around for 30 years, but we're expanding beyond smart car to smart real estate. So the purpose of us being here today is that we make real estate smart, secure, and also sustainable, and we work directly with developers to get them up to speed. Someone had mentioned earlier today that there's a lot of things. It's almost overwhelming to take in all this information, especially around some of the wellness devices as well. That's what we do. We're your easy button to get you educated with smart, secure, and sustainable real estate. So again, we appreciate the opportunity to work with you. If there's any developers that are interested in working with us directly, we just look at specs and plans and we can start the dialogue from there. But again, thank you for your time, and we're a proud sponsor of today's event.
So thank you to Sean and HomeLink. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Really appreciate your commitment to this event. And with that, let's get back to your networking. Thanks. Yeah, thank you.